should be set by our IT staff.
Recording in progress.
All right, good evening and welcome to the Port Orchard City Council's work study session for July 15th. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we've got an action-packed evening with lots of good stuff on it. So let's get rolling here. We've got our friends from Rice Fergus Millen here tonight to talk about the Community Event Center. So they've got a presentation. And if you guys get to introduce yourself, I know all of you, but not everybody else does. So.
Sure. So Dean Kelly, I'm a principal and architect at Rice Fergus Miller.
Lori Cook, also an architect at Rice Fergus Miller, and the project manager for the team.
Leah Swoboda, interior designer at Rice Fergus Miller.
All right, so we're going to walk through an update on the progress with the Community Event Center project. So Lori's going to take us through schedule, kind of overall components of the project, look at some of the site developments and the shoreline work. Then we'll move over to the Community Event Center itself, and I'll kind of walk you through the exterior of the building and the plaza, and then Leah's going to walk us through the interior.
Quick question, is this the same presentation that we have in our packet?
It is.
It is, yes, and then we'll shoot to leave at least 15 minutes for questions.
Okay.
All right, let me see here, make sure am I clicking this, there you go. So we're just gonna start with the schedule, just to give you an idea of where we've been and where we are today on everything. So I know it's hard to read, but this red line represents where we are today. We're in the middle of July. So RFM is involved in 3 of the projects that's going on in Port Orchard. The top one is the shoreline. The middle one is the Community Event Center itself, and then this bottom one is Orchard Plaza. So for the shoreline work, which is where we're restoring that water shore and the overwater deck, this gray bar is representing the ongoing approvals with the different agencies involved, including the Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife, Ecology, and that's been ongoing actually since last year, so we've just kind of been on hold since we submitted to them, just waiting. We've had some comments back and forth with them, but we're feeling like this month is the month, hopefully we'll either wrap it up or maybe just extend a little bit more to August, because we got some positive feedback in the last round with them. So we're going to show you where that design stands after we go through the schedule. And the orange line represents us jumping back into those documents and taking all the design details further and into construction documents. Then on the Community Event Center, this orange bar up here represents us right now. We are in the middle of construction documents phase. That project is pretty much designed already. Most of the decisions have been made, so we're just taking the details, preparing that document for permitting and construction, with the intent of getting permits submitted here in the next few months leading up to next year. And then the last piece is Orchard Plaza, that top bar. We're just now diving back into it. We completed schematic design on Orchard Plaza about, I don't know, a year and a half ago now. It's also been on pause, just kind of waiting to see how the shoreline approvals go to make sure there's nothing there that might affect that design. And then we're going to jump into that as well, leading up to the next few months. So I'm going to go over where we are on the shoreline design first. Let's see. Working? Where should I be pointing this?
Probably behind.
Where?
Probably towards behind you.
Behind me? Oh, back here?
Get to the first slide.
Sometimes it has a mind of its own.
Where should I point it?
Will the mouse advance it?
No,
I mean, you can't talk.
So we'll start with Orchard Plaza. So this just gives an overview. This site plan's a little bit old, but it does give an overview of everything that's going on around downtown Port Orchard. As you know, there's the Bay Street project. There's Kitsap Bank that eventually will build their own headquarters. We are doing the CEC, the shoreline up north, Point. We got the Community Event Center here, the shoreline restoration of the overwater deck, and then we have Orchard Plaza with that lift station that is ongoing there right now. Next slide. Should I just tell you when to switch?
Yes.
Okay. So, as I mentioned, Orchard Plaza was in schematic design, and so these images are just some of the concepts that were included in that schematic design. This one particularly relating to the proposed pavement. There's going to be a variety of pavement, just kind of creating some patterns on that design for pathways versus event spaces and such. Next slide. And then these are some of the elements that were proposed, including the benches, the lights. A lot of this still need to be figured out. These are just some of the initial ideas of what to have in that Orchard Plaza for seating areas and activities around the spot. Next.
Quick
Yeah,
question
sorry.
now,
Sure,
or you want to
sure.
Are you suggesting that all of these are proposed?
Not
No,
necessarily.
not
Okay,
necessarily.
that's
These
what I
are some of
wanted.
the ideas that were thrown in there. The
Okay.
final design needs to still happen during this next phase.
I know like the power boxes, I know we dove deep into that because we want, if we're gonna house the farmer's market there, we'd really prefer them not to be running generators to power their needs in their booths, and we wanna have power available to plug into to have a great environment in there. Beyond that, everything else you see there are just concepts and ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, apologies, yes, please stop me if there's any questions along the way. This is just the landscape plan that just shows where we have pavement versus landscape and plantings, and I know you guys have these slides, so there's some, I forget what it's called now, this one here, I can't zoom in.
The bioswale.
Yes, the bioswale, and then it's kind of using the landscape to define some of the areas, like this here is intended to be potentially a performance area, if you will, with some seats around it, and then trying to make sure that there's a path. This actually allows a utility truck to drive from Frederick and all the way around so that they can still access that lift station while still making it look like it's a pedestrian plaza.
Well, it's a continuation of the waterfront trail that will run
Correct, yeah.
along
This
the
one
end of
here,
the
yeah.
community event center.
And we also need to accommodate the port's fueling needs for their dock. There's their fuel tanks in that left corner.
Bioswale's a good idea, but the bar table's probably too high for that.
For the swale to work,
We're raising
You're not
the,
gonna get any infiltration by any of it, on that.
The
It's a
plaza's going to be higher
bioretention
than the
point.
existing grade out there, so we're elevating everything. And there's also an existing outfall that we're tying into that I believe is, the bioswale is providing water quality treatment with an overflow into an existing outfall.
Okay.
And so it's a direct discharge situation where, because we have the pipe there, there's,
Some metric.
yeah.
Okay, next slide. Next slide. Yeah, we're just flipping through these because like I said, these are all conceptuals that have been presented for that Orchard Plaza. And these are a couple of the boulders and logs that are called out in the landscape plan if you have a chance to read through those details. Next slide. And varieties of plants that, again, all of these are suggestions. None of this has been figured out yet of what exactly we're going to put. So that's the next phase, is to actually pin those down.
but, drawing from native plant palette primarily and getting a variety of color, texture, things like that, or some of the overall goals with the plantings.
Yes.
Are you looking for our input on some of this stuff
no,
here?
not at this time.
No,
The
not
the
here.
landscape architects and things will make these designs, and then we'll bring back, what their recommendations are.
Thanks.
Next slide, yes. This is an illumination plan, just a couple of things to highlight. So there will be poles along the path here for pedestrian lighting. This line here that looks like a star, that's intended to be catenary lighting over that area that's intended for events. benches and some within the landscape. And so on the next slide, you'll see some of those concepts again of what was being suggested, like here's your catenary lighting, the light poles, and so forth. And again, none of this have been defined or selected yet, so these are all ideas right now.
But, you know, generally layers of lighting, lighting at the seating, lighting at gathering spaces, of course, along the streets, we've got the light poles, and then lower level bollards along walkways, and then some spotlights to highlight features within the landscape, such as, you know, maybe a featured tree or a piece of artwork, something like that.
Is there any opportunities for, like, how we have solar out here? Is there any
Community-
opportunity
community-
for solar? over
Community
there?
center has some on it.
Will that also be able to run lights out there, or just?
I think it primarily go to the building, and it won't meet all of the building's need.
Oh, no, no, for sure, yeah.
But there is solar on the building.
Yeah.
When we're looking at these lighting options, are they gonna be congruent with what we have in the rest of the city?
Well, this is kind of the
We talked
kickoff.
about that
Yeah,
with the rest of the,
we have some standards for the streetlights that, I know the streetlights have been picked already, and you can, I think it's that one
I
that's in
think
the
this
top
one is
Mhm.
one
left
here,
there.
or this one here.
That, I believe
Yeah.
it's
That's
that.
American style, and so
Yeah.
we have a design manual for downtown from like 15 years ago where we picked lighting. We've always tried to stay in kind of that family, and so this is really the palette, and now the designers are pulling from this palette and specifying the exact fixtures into it.
The light fixtures in Bay Street and in any of them that are in the, you know, that are the street light type will have irrigation in them and the ability to hang hanging baskets and have automatic watering to them, so.
Because these don't match what we have up on Tremont.
Correct, they do not,
Okay. Where do we get the replacements for that?
from PSC.
Okay.
And it's.
Because we've had some that have been damaged up there for quite some time. I'm just thinking, if we had a stockpile,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
everything matched, it would be easier to plug and play.
PSC is, we pay to have two in stock. There's custom lights, and unfortunately, those on particular lights on the Tremont corridor seem to get knocked down faster than they can be made and replaced, so. But yeah, initially they had one, we told them start carrying two, and Dennis, you can probably, where are we at on those? I know they've been probably a month that way.
I don't want to say, I'm sorry to tell you that they're fixed, I think it was last week, and it was hit again this new.
No way.
Yeah.
As I said, it's been more than 9 days
But they've been,
that I've been waiting to say something.
they've been
Just see how
replaced
long it
and
takes.
then damaged
Yeah,
again.
And it's,
Within just
So-
recently.
I thought you were actually, at first I thought you were asking a question about how do we replace the existing standards along the waterfront?
No, he's referring to
I get that,
Yeah.
but then the question I thought was, well, how do we find replacements?
a lot of money. So,
Do they have security cameras so we know who
That's
runs
the
into them?
insurance paid, right?
in most cases,
Yeah.
it's just lead time on custom lights.
and there's design improvements that we're making, and they're not gonna be that close in the road.
Well, this seems like a ripe discussion for what we want now, but also what's sustainable 20 years out.
And I'm just thinking, if we had them all the same,
Yeah.
easy to have 10 or 12 or however. I don't know what the need would be for the city, but,
Yeah.
I don't
I
believe the
would
ones on
think that'd be-
Tremont are nice enough for our downtown.
And
Yeah, I
lighting
think
a
that's where I
plaza,
was going.
lighting a plaza is different than lighting a street, so I think that it's a different lighting product, in the plaza. And they're not gonna get hit by cars there, so,
We should.
we hope.
yeah, maybe a fuel truck, but.
Don't say that.
It's movements in the roundabout, people driving too fast in the roundabouts.
I would think the poles are getting damaged, not the lights, so.
Yeah, it is.
Well, yeah, but the light is on top of the pole, and yeah,
Should be able to,
yeah.
can we come back around?
All right, we should probably get back on point
Yes,
here.
that's, sounds going.
We're going
So,
down a rabbit hole.
so now we're gonna jump to the shoreline. Go ahead, next slide, go ahead, next slide. This is just a map, just basically showing where we are relative to the rest of Sinclair Inlet. Next slide. So this is a view of what is there, what the existing conditions essentially. So as you can see, there's this black line that represents the edge of the water now with the Kitsap Bank building sitting right next to it. I know there's a narrow walkway behind that right now, but we will now compare this to what we are proposing. So next slide. This is just a zoomed-in view as they're analyzing the water levels relative to that Kitsap Bank edge. Next slide. So this one here is what we're proposing. The yellow edge represents where the current wall sits, and what we're proposing is this green wall as a new retaining wall, as well as this blue wall. The blue wall is underneath this deck that is extended to extend over the water. And you'll see there's some section cuts here. One is cutting where there's no deck. 2 and 3 are cutting through the deck, and we'll look at that on the next slide.
Real
Oh,
quick,
yeah.
just to orient everyone, and we'll see this in some of the later visuals too, but where the deck is positioned over water, that kind of hourglass shape right below that is hardscape for the plaza coming out of the community event center. The white box going diagonal is the community event center, so we have big windows and doors that connect you from the interior of the community event center out into that outdoor plaza, and then the overwater is an extension of that. So that's really a concentrated gathering space that's designed into the community event center, and it has second story decks that kind of frame that open space as well. So you'll have opportunities for viewing and gathering on multiple levels in that zone.
Is retaining wall and bulkhead the same thing?
Yes, yeah, pretty similar. Yeah, just kind of different terminology, but we're going to be pulling that all back. The existing bulkhead wall there is failing, so that was one of the reasons why early on we analyzed the feasibility of just keeping it in its current location, but it became really clear that structurally it was unsound. And then part of the strategy too of pulling it back is to create more shoreline habitat, because the shallower waters, as you start to come back up and be more gradual, is more beneficial to some of the different marine habitats that we can create. So all of that worked into the calculations that the Department of Ecology has been looking at.
So how long did they get to get permitting for that?
To get permits?
Yeah, for that.
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing now. It's been going since last year,
I thought we submitted in 23, so.
something like that. Yeah. So it's been ongoing the last several months. That's why they've been on pause this whole time.
Yeah, and as we found out, they have this shoreline calculator that factors in all these different habitats and the credits you get for this, and it's constantly changing, because we submitted under thinking we were getting a certain set of points, and then we got a different set of points, so it's been an interesting process for sure. Yeah.
And
So
what's frustrating is we didn't vest at the time of our application to the rule. I know that we've had the rules change on us a couple of times while our permit is active, and we're trying to, so we design, think we've got it figured out, and we're working through the process. No, the rules changed, and now, and before it was half, I think, concrete and half graded, and I think we're down to, are we all graded now?
We are graded right about where this line is on the deck, this
Yeah.
back, or the back or the front, the water side of it, that's all graded rating, or about 50% at least exposure to sunlight, so that some of that sunlight can get to the water. Yes.
So the red dots, what do those represent?
Oh, those represent the piles that are supporting the deck.
No,
underneath.
sorry, next to the asphalt that's proposed, you've got some,
Next to
next to
here.
next to the hourglass, that was
The shading?
Oh, the shading, gotcha, that's part of the landscape.
So that would be planted areas.
Yes.
Okay, and then my next question is, have we decided on asphalt versus concrete?
We're pretty much proposing, I believe, not asphalt, the concrete type of pavement
Okay, good.
Yeah.
for all of this.
Yeah, I think the only area that is asphalt is the parking area outside of the Kitsap Bank headquarters.
Okay, I just was looking at the legend, it shows the dots as asphalt.
That must be a mislabel there.
It should not be asphalt, but this is definitely landscape area, and then this white part is that pavement that's like Dean was explaining.
Yeah,
There's some doors that come out.
great, thank you.
So then, sorry, I thought you meant these little red circles here.
No.
The yellow shade represents essentially the additional shoreline you're getting versus what was there before. Because like I said, this is the edge. This edge here is where the current wall sits. So this yellow area represents that additional shoreline now. So we're definitely improving on what's there. Next slide. So I wanted to point you to these cross sections that were cut through that previous drawing. So up here is a section where there's no deck. So this line that's dashed represents where the wall is now. so you can see how much more gradual slope we're providing. Some of the recent discussions with the agency is what to do in this slope, whether that's rockery or some plantings. That's part of the more recent comments that we're addressing with the jurisdiction. And then these two cuts are through the deck. So you can see there's the slope of the shore below it, and then the deck does extend beyond where the wall is now. So you're definitely gonna get a lot more area. Meanwhile, this deck, the part that's the darker black, that represents the part that's graded with that minimum 50% requirement that they dictated to us. Next slide.
How do we get away with that?
What's that?
Because this is concrete, and it's not, sunlight can't get through.
That's why we have the grading.
On 50% of it. The other part is concrete. That's, and
They require 50% light penetration.
And we're getting credit for removing the fill, so that's mitigating the impacts of any
There's
graded
pluses and
portion or the
minuses.
concrete portion, so they have to balance out. So we look at the impacts versus the benefits, and we have to have enough credit against, to offset the impacts.
Is that something we could do on the pathway further down that we're having issues?
no, because we're not moving the shoreline back. We're getting credit. Remember, we're carving, we have this and we're carving back. We get credit for this habitat restoration here, and that's one of the credits we get in this process. And then,
So we can supply that same.
Well, out there, you're getting credit for demolishing the houses, so the buildings that come down are the mitigations for you can on the grid pathway. So it's a similar concept, just different.
the houses and more, and actually what we're getting more credit for is the pilings in the future.
I thought we had to have it be a see-through
We
sunlight.
do, yeah.
But we don't have to.
There's a complex formula that goes into this that, like I said, has been a moving target that is allowing us to do what we're doing.
John likes complex things.
So we could reverse engineer that and utilize the same.
No, our mitigation we have there, we only have enough to get us to where we're at. We don't have extra mitigation to do.
Agreed, but we could do this to make the pathway happen.
If we did away with the road and carved the shoreline back, and we'd have to do it, but I don't think that's realistic.
I assume you're talking about something else.
So
Yes,
we're on a
sorry, I'm
different
trying
project.
to apply the same.
Yeah.
principle.
All right, let's get back on the
Okay.
community center project.
So these are just photos of what's there, so we can skip through these slides unless any of you need to stop and take a look. Just go ahead, next slide. Next slide, and next slide. One more. And this is just an overview, if you've never seen this side of it, of what you've got there. So this is the area really we're working on, right here, that will be improving in this proposal. Okay, the next slide, I believe this is CEC, so I'll turn it over to Dean
Okay.
to talk about the actual community event center.
Okay, so just to orient you, Bay Street would be here on the bottom half of the page, so Bay Street's kind of curving around. We have Orchard Plaza here on the right-hand side of the screen, and then this is Port Street. That's the name of the street?
Yes.
Right? Port Street. So Port Street coming in, and then the waterfront here on the top half of the page. So coming in off of Orchard Plaza, we have kind of the main entry into the community event center. We also have a stairway that takes you up to the deck, which you can see kind of dashed in here. The deck up above that's overlooking the waterfront. So walking in through the vestibules, there's a shared lobby, because this will have kind of the primary tenant on the ground floor will be the Kitsap Regional Library branch. And then upstairs is most of the programming for the community events, banquet rooms and things of that nature. So shared lobby, that can be, KRL has the ability to close down their spaces when the center is not open for general use, but elevators and stairways that take you up to the second floor where the community event center functions are. Right off the main lobby, we have restrooms. We have a shared function space. This is or I should say a Kitsap Regional Library program space here along the waterfront where they can do a whole host of different programs. They're thinking of things for kids. anyone, but a flexible space where they can do multimedia and have different groups in there. This is the main library space, so we've got kind of the stacks running through. We have some multimedia centers. This is kind of the main checkout, so you kind of enter in and then flow back out through this main space right here. We do have some special program areas, one of which is the teens collection, which is right here. You'll notice this outdoor area, and you'll see this in the exterior renderings. So this is an outdoor extension of the teen collection, which will have some seating areas and things like that. It's a way to activate Bay Street and have the teens kind of have an area that can be a space to hang out, that they can make their own to a certain degree. And similarly, we have the kids section, which is in a bit more of a protected location, facing out towards the waterfront. So this would be the kids collection, and then there is a similar outdoor covered area for the kids, and that kind of syncs up with some of the landscape and other kind of active activities on the site plan that those kids could take advantage of. As we work our way farther to the left of the plan, this is all kind of the KRL operations side of things, where they have offices, sorting. The Port Street area will be used for loading, both for community events as well as for the library itself. So there's a service elevator with access right off of Port Street, where we'll have temporary loading parking spaces to get things easily in and out for supporting events. Also have kind of some back-of-house electrical, mechanical spaces tucked back in this corner as well. And then lastly, there is this retail tenant space that's just over 1,000 square feet. Again, that's located on this prime location along Bay Street, so the hope is that could be a cafe, a retailer of some sort who could help to further activate the streetscape there along Bay Street.
Dean, also, we have office space at right there and a
Right in here and
customer
here.
service counter there for
Yep.
folks, I'm envisioning probably the clerk's office moving over there, because there's gonna be probably an additional employee that we're going to need that's going to be in charge of managing, leasing events, and this employee probably is gonna become kind of our festival person, and have that person housed here and operating under the clerk's office. So we have room there for, a few employees there, in there, and then a customer service counter related to it. So somebody can come and walk in, we're having a wedding, or I wanna rent a room for for some sort of whatever meeting, yeah. So that exists there. Go ahead, Scott.
So, the library stacking, is that the same amount as the existing library? Do we know? It looks to me shy of,
Small. Yeah, I think the overall space looks like it's smaller than the current footprint on that.
We don't have any more real estate to offer them, though.
Well, and I know you've analyzed that quite closely with KRLs.
Yeah,
Speak to that, Leah.
I don't remember exactly where it lands compared against their current. We could go back and find that, but we have looked at that with the KRL staff and, kind of what they anticipate their collection size to be in this new location. So those kind of figures have been done.
I do know they're shrinking on, going more digital, and so that may have something to do with it.
They've been involved in this from
No,
the
I
very,
agree.
very beginning.
just visually, it looks like it's quite different.
But it's gonna be
from what we see.
laid out much better and much more functional than what they have.
Similar in square footage.
Go ahead, Heidi.
My question, well, I got two questions. On the capacity of the event center for hosting, a big event, what is the capacity of that?
We'll get to that.
How many
That's on
people?
the next floor.
We'll show you that on the next floor,
Okay.
and then, yeah, we do have some of those figures as well.
Okay, and then when it comes to the teen section
Mhm.
and then the kids, is that have to do with just the library when it's
Yes.
open, and then it's not any more
Correct.
than that?
Correct.
That's correct,
This
yes.
is there, other than the retail space is for us to lease, and which is that left corner. And then we've got a small office space and a customer service counter there. Other than that, there's the common areas, of course, but the rest of the ground floor is under the library's control.
So it's kind of
So are you asking about the outdoor areas?
Yeah, the outdoor
Yeah,
teen
the
area.
teens
They're partnered.
and the kids.
The outdoor teen area is not locked off in the library.
It's not locked off, so it is an extension of the library activities, but, you know, there's not gonna be a gate or anything, so anyone.
For the
can
outside
potentially-
area.
Right, but the doors would be locked, but yes, these areas would be open. We do have two, this was what, the Friends of the Library, this
Correct.
little space up front. So they have outdoor access, so that
That's
the
going away.
volunteers,
That,
Oh,
there's
it's
none out
going
today
away.
that
oh, okay,
exterior doors going away.
never mind,
It's going away.
Yeah, KRL just
The-
has to
the exterior.
remove that.
Okay.
door, yeah.
okay.
The room will still be there, but it'll just be accessed off the vestibule.
We're
Just
letting them
came through
control
today.
their space. And
No, that's, I was gonna say,
They're-
that is a shame, because
Yeah.
it's easier to get their
Their books in.
their books in and out,
Yeah.
for that, for.
They're concerned about security, I guess, is what
Yeah,
made them
I'm
decide
sure.
that.
They are also, we're not providing any of the community center build out doesn't pay for any of their furnishings. They're responsible for their own furnishings, we're responsible for our furnishings.
So we can cohesive.
Well, their space is separate from
You know,
ours.
as
We're
they say,
upstairs.
if it's done, so it's done.
Same design firm is doing it all.
Well, we don't have a contract for their furnishings, but we're hoping
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
get that contract.
And then my last little tidbit, I see the all genders bathroom, I understand the concept, I have not seen it deployed.
Well.
Well.
What is it now?
It's a common area.
Common area in the bathroom where
Yeah.
we all use the same.
Yeah, and
So private toilet stalls with shared,
you did a
sinks.
CTAC
They are,
airport lately?
they're full pipe walls, they go all the way up to the ceiling, all the way
Oh,
down to the floor, so it's an
Yeah.
individual toilet.
And the
room.
door
It's
does
not-
too?
And the door does too,
Okay,
yes.
perfect, yeah.
There's no cracks that
Okay, good.
people are peering in, you're in your own room,
Yeah.
and then when you come
You're
out,
in a
the
closet.
sinks are shared.
Okay.
It's like I've seen that in airports.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone has been to, Vive Coworks and, sorry, the Centennial Building in Paulsville, where Crabtree is and Vive is, they have a similar
As long as
situation.
they full floor to ceiling doors, I think
Full
it'd be fine.
height, they
Work it.
lock, they, yeah.
Then
I've been in those.
that
right.
There's no
alleviates my
noise
concern.
mitigation. You don't have as long lines for the women.
No, why didn't we go that way instead of,
It's
you
just
know?
it's just the way designs are going with we've got,
Airports are going that way. It's
Yeah.
just,
They
it's
are?
more efficient, yeah.
SeaTac Airports
I
is,
haven't seen that.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's
In,
a see
in
all over
public
SeaTac Airports.
spaces, you know, can be a little more inclusive, it can be a little more efficient too in how we're using the space. I think we save a little bit on the square footage by doubling up and not having the extra circulation areas for serving both.
And you know how the men's restroom is always empty anyway, and the women's is always got a line, so in this case.
We're
anyone
independent,
can-
I mean, they don't pay us, so.
And there's two, there's one on the first
That was a
floor.
boo. That was a boo.
Is that easily changed if, I get it, it's in vogue now, is that easily changed down the line by its design?
We're past that design decision, I think. I don't know that we can.
I'm not asking for it to change, I'm asking if it was easily changed.
I think
Plumbing,
we
probably not
only,
easily.
if you really wanna change it in the future to, men and women, I think your solution would be the one on one floor is men or women, and the one on upstairs is, because there's two of them, you can look at the second
Cause
floor.
yeah, we've got another restroom stacked on top of
Yeah.
this.
So no, it can't be easily changed.
Ah, I didn't realize.
I think we can go to the next slide.
It's kind of like roundabouts, they're used to.
We're gonna hear about that.
We're getting beyond our time with allotted for this, so let's move on here.
All right, so this is the second floor. So if you came into the lobby and either went up the big stair, the stair does have kind of a double height component to it, so a bit of a wow factor, and you know, it connects the two floors. There's also a hole in the floor over the library, so you'll be able to kind of look down and see into and above, so creating kind of a dynamic space. The elevator is here as well, so kind of coming right off into this shared area. So this is the primary event space. So we have the large kind of ballroom, banquet room space. It can be subdivided into two spaces, or it can be kept open as one larger space. There's also a catering kitchen right here that can support kind of food and beverage for events in the main ballroom space, or any of the spaces on this level for that matter. We do have a large conference room, meeting room area off to the side of the shared lobby, and then a series of 3 spaces along this hallway. One's kind of a medium-sized meeting room with 2 smaller meeting rooms. And then we have these little phone booth areas where someone could break away, make a quick call, get on the Zoom meeting. We've just seen more and more of those in use. I was at Vibe Coworks sometime last year, and we had designed a similar thing for them, and I was happy to see them well in use. They were almost all full. As we work our way down the plan, we have storage and support space off of the service elevator right here to support, storage for chairs, tables, everything that's going to be needed to support the events. And then we do have, it's been batted around what the program will be for this space for a while. Right now, I think it's just
We're gonna
an
leave
open
it
table
blank
space.
at this point. When we started this pre-COVID, co-working spaces were the rage, and so we thought that would be a great use for this space, and that business model has just changed. Kitsap Regional, our agreement with KRL, they're gonna manage these meeting rooms, and their business model provides, it's something that they provide to the community. Our events will have priority over free community use of the meeting rooms if a big event is coming in and is paying us for it. But for the co-working spaces, their business model to work, where they're making their money is renting meeting rooms, and that is in conflict with what the library's mission is. So we need to, we're just gonna leave that, drywall only in that space, and we'll figure out, and whoever leases that from us will then, they'll have to do their own tenant improvements in that space. But it's got a great views.
Yeah, this is all glass.
Steps out onto
towards the
that
waterfront.
deck. So I think it, I don't know whether we have, we'll later figure out a use for it or release it to somebody. But right now, I didn't want to hold things up trying to figure out what we're gonna do with that space. So we're just gonna leave it as drywall.
And this dashed rectangle indicates the overall roof overhang for the main roof of the structure. So this is kind of that entry area. So that will be covered on the ground floor when you're coming in off the plaza, as well as this portion of the deck will be covered. We do have kind of these piers that stick out, and that performance space in the overwater deck is framed by those areas. So that will be uncovered once you walk out past that dashed line. And then last thing here to mention is just this is a telescoping or folding glass door system for the banquet space. So there'll be the ability for certain events when that's appropriate to just open this all up and have this be one wide open space that can take advantage of that lobby as well.
So all opened up and including the deck, what is our capacity on this for a large event? I thought it was like 250-ish?
I can't tell you including the deck, that number I don't have on hand, but the banquet space itself, for a seated kind of dinner is about 110 to 130 people. For if it's set up more kind of lecture style with just chairs and rows, we can seat up to 160.
Yeah, as is now, it's like 110 with the tables.
With round tables and chairs for like a sit-down dinner.
It's 6 people at the table, it's 108.
108, yeah.
So if it's 8 people, then it
They're
goes.
trying to be a little generous with servers,
It's 124.
people that would be in there.
But if you go out, but if you had an event where you could open the deck, put some tables outside, you'd probably get close to about 200.
But the doors don't tell us to.
That's just inside.
deck.
So if we did open it up to the deck, we could get some more tables out there. And if that's a number that we need to find, we can certainly study a table layout out.
It'd be nice to see.
Sure.
I don't know we want to spend our money on them analyzing that.
Can we move the staging kitchen into that? What was the?
Catering kitchen?
Yeah, we're beyond that in the design.
Which are,
Well, just, I mean, if we're no longer gonna do the shared working space and we have no future designed use for that space, could we move that there and open up the main space to be larger and create more capacity in that section there?
Costs us a lot, right?
It's a design contract revision because we're already into the construction much rather do that than have a space that nobody ever uses for all the time.
We'll use it.
Or a space that has been designed to be used in a certain way.
If nothing else, we can turn it into another meeting space. You know, the kitchen.
So we're gonna give more space to K&R.
No,
Can't manage it.
question, it could be ours.
You just said that they have to manage that space, that's why we couldn't have a co-working space.
They're the meeting rooms that we have, that space up there in the left corner is ours, if we want to, see it however we wanna use it. The kitchen doesn't need to have windows to the exterior, where the office spaces, you know, in the meetings rooms and the banquet space all look out to the water and the mountains.
Speaking of the dining area, have you considered the north side having walls that completely open?
On this side
On
of
the north side.
oh, on this side.
To the deck. Is that too expensive? Because I like the way you do it on the right. where it expands out.
Guys, the building's been designed for
So the answer is no.
3 or
You're
4
saying no.
years now.
Okay, I just wondered if you
Long
wanted
ago,
that space.
we're beyond
Can't recall if we
I don't
looked
moving
at that.
walls
Yeah, I don't remember if we
and
explored that at an earlier phase or not. We may.
One thing that would be an easier switch, if we wanted more openness, would be to create double doors here as opposed to singles.
And are we renting
Not gonna
out
get a budget to get it done.
those little teeny office spaces? Those are
The
gonna be
library,
rentable?
library is.
Even the big one in the back and all these little ones, those are gonna be rented out
But the
by the
library,
city?
The library.
library will control that space.
Which
well,
means
they
it's
don't
something to
control
create.
it. They are gonna manage the
Reservations.
The reservation system. We have, we,
Yeah. Which means
the banquet space is ours, okay?
Right.
So if the Rotary Club wants to have a board meeting and they wanna use the meeting room for free, they can reserve one of these meeting rooms and use it. But if we've got an event, next weekend that wants to lease the community center and the meeting spaces, and they need them for their event, what we've discussed with the library is, someone paying us to use the facility trumps, community organizations getting to use the space for free. Does that make sense?
No, I get it. I was just so surprised that, honestly, that banquet room, that is only between 110 to 140. Like, our Rotary couldn't do a fundraiser there at all, because we have 300 people that attend. So I thought this was gonna be bigger than what it is right now. I'm kinda surprised, to be honest.
We can't sit down.
Yeah, we're gonna eat our crabs, they do.
So, another question about the future tenant space, will they be subject to the hours of the building then?
Yet to be determined. It may not be a tenant space. It could be something that we're using it for.
Yeah,
At this point, we know, what I didn't wanna do, I knew it shouldn't be a co-working space.
right.
And so the design was building that out as a co-working space. We've rolled that back and said, hey, we don't wanna buy furniture for that, we don't wanna put carpet in that space and build it out as a co-working space. Let's continue finish the design for the rest of the building, and that's for you guys to help, figure out what it is how we wanna use that space in that top left corner.
So you wonder if that.
It's not, it could possibly be
That was part of the
a lease space, but it doesn't have to
They
be.
would get it through the building.
Outside door.
Okay.
Well,
And this might be crazy.
It is a very nice space, and
If
we're,
the kitchen is way over there,
All right.
where that space is, and then you
Okay.
have all that more room for banquet, where the kitchen is, but I
That's
guess that
John's
can't
idea.
happen. But, I don't know, anyway.
Moving forward.
is that, if that's the desire we can get a proposal from Wright Fergus Miller to redesign the building, but that will take time and money, and people are already clamoring that this project isn't moving forward. We're busting our behinds to get this thing to construction no later than 2027. If we back up the bus and redesign the building, it's gonna come, we've spent all our design dollars, that'd be coming out of the city coffers to do that. And
And it would require redesigning the staircase to
It's
that?
better design it now than later.
No,
No,
I'm
I don't
talking,
think so.
well,
The staircase can still.
so the catering would, if you move the catering kitchen over, the catering would then have to use the hallway, the upper hallway, to get to the banquet.
There's an
space.
elevator in that space
As
for them
well.
to move things up and down.
And I want to share a cautionary tale on this, and there's a couple of things. Number one, we have other grants that have time limits on spending the money. So the overwater portion of the project, we have a grant from RCO that has a deadline. I also would like to highlight, I know I've heard about a project in Bremerton, a bridge project, where the city council chose to, I think, redesign a bridge for bike lanes because there were different problems, and I've heard now that the funding of that, for that project is in jeopardy because of the taking steps back. And so I think that there is risk of going backwards.
I think I'd share that, I think maybe this shouldn't be the first presentation in 18 months for this project if we were concerned about a timeline.
Yeah, correct.
So,
And is this gonna be a moneymaker for us or not?
Community centers do not make money, they do not.
Hopefully break even.
Okay,
Next slide. All right, so here's the outside, looking at the building from the Orchard Plaza. The paving that you're seeing here is a bit more just generic hardscape. The design of the plaza itself would be more of kind of those gradients of patterned concrete that you saw on the landscape presentation and the site plan slides. There are some kind of built-in seating and planting areas that go along that, and then work your way back to the waterfront trail at the end of the plaza. Looking down Bay Street, you can see the teen portal poking its way out of the building for that covered outdoor space for the teens. Some big swaths of glazing that will allow you to see through whether you're inside the building or not from the street to the water. So that was kind of one of the big emphasis of the project, was to create connections and opportunities to discover new things about the history of Port Orchard, to rediscover the waterfront that's been kind of the domain of parking lots and bank structures and stuff for decades. So really reclaiming that as a public space. You see the stairway kind of taking your way up to the decks, and then this would be the main entry into the community event center itself. Port Orchard kind of built into this wood slat screen. We've been working on the details of this right now. So we're looking at a perforated metal screen to be the railing structure, very durable. Won't have concerns with climbing that you do. The earlier design was showing kind of a horizontal rail system, and kids and stuff can climb up those. So the perforated rail is what we're looking at now. It can be lit up too. It's really great at taking light. So ultimately, where the letters are for the cutouts, we're looking at bringing that product in, so you'll be able to see with a little more contrast the Port Orchard, but it'll be tied in with the same material that we're using on the railings, and still provide kind of the shadow patterns that cuts through, which will create a nice effect that changes throughout the day, and then when it becomes illuminated at night, kind of a transformative effect.
Do you have examples of that?
Not in this presentation, but
No,
we
no,
can
no,
provide that.
For sure, no, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you questions tonight,
Sure,
but
yeah.
I want you to be able to whip out, but if you have something in the future,
Sure,
just send it to
Yep.
Mayor, who can distribute it.
Yeah, absolutely.
No worries about, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's similar types of materials that are used at like the new ferry terminal in Seattle, where they have some of those perforated rails. We're looking at a different kind of size and scale than where they're looking at, but it's a similar kind of idea. Next slide. This is looking at the project from the Port Street side, looking down Bay Street. So similar to Port Orchard, you see the illuminated community on this side. This is that retail space along Bay Street. Again, kind of more temporary parking for loading primarily on Port Street, with access into the library back of house, as well as the service elevator that's serving the community events portion on the second floor. And then you can see kind of the covered teen area right here. So wanting to have it be durable, it's got kind of a concrete base along the street, but a translucent glass material that's creating kind of this wall and the covered structure itself. It's kind of a green color that works with the KRL kind of color palette. So they have the orange, green, and blue. So there's a similar blue canopy structure on the rear side with the kids area. So next slide. This is showing that hourglass-shaped performance space with the deck up above. You can see the covered area of the deck with the piers looking out, and then the overwater deck would be a continuation of this space just off of the page. Waterfront trail kind of going by as well, and then the kids area off here, kind of in the back of the image. Next slide. Yep, this is the next one. Yep, so this is just a little view looking back at the community event center from the deck. So standing out on one of the piers, seeing the covered area. We are using a mass timber hybrid structure for this project, which is pretty cool, tying into kind of the timber heritage of where we are. But it's a CLT roof structure, so you'll be able to see the exposed wood that's part of that product on the roof itself. So we're creating a wood soffit that's also a structural system, that's also a sustainable product. It does have a solar array on the roof as well as came up before. And then it's a timber structure on the interior of the building, primary columns and with glulam beams. The glulam beams you can see moving out, but then where we're outside and we're not undercover, we do have a steel structure to make sure that this will hold up in kind of the shoreline environment. You're seeing some of those openings there into the different conference rooms and whatnot on the deck. Now we're into the interior.
Yeah. All right, so we've got quite a few interior views, so I'll try to go through them fairly quickly, but please stop me if you have any questions. So right now we're standing as if we had just come in the front door, and we're seeing that service counter that Mayor Rob had mentioned before, where you could come and, rent out a room, or they could help direct you to an event upstairs. To the right of the image, we're seeing into KRL's space. So with that big glass operable partition that we imagine will be, open during the day, and that's really your main entrance to the library, and then they have the ability to secure it off after hours. And then on the left side of the image, you're seeing just a little hint of the stairs leading you upstairs and the elevator. Next slide. Now we've moved just a little bit further into the space. We're kind of standing by the stair elevator lobby, and we're looking towards KRL's primary space here and their enclosable program space directly in front of us, with a great view and doors out to the water as well there. Next slide. All right, now we've moved kind of fully into that shared lobby space with flexible furniture. We're looking up through this cut in the floor. It's a double height space. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about this feature wall towards the end, but really the big idea here is that it's large scale. There's a skylight above with a screen, and the whole idea with that is that it kind of casts this beautiful dappled light, and it changes throughout the day. So if you were to sit here for a couple of hours and the sun is moving, you sort of see this light move and transform, and it's a really dynamic experience. Next slide. All right, so now we're turned in the opposite direction, and we're looking into KRL space. Just want to point out here that, while their spaces are enclosable so that they can secure them, we really want the building to feel like one cohesive space. So you see, ceiling elements that are kind of tying these two spaces together. Still a pretty elevated level of finish that feels appropriate for the event spaces that surround it. Next slide. Now we're looking towards the stair. You can see views out to Bay Street through this large window. The intention for both the stair treads and the glulam bench is that they are reclaimed wood structural members from the existing Kitsap Bank building, so that helps tie in kind of some of the history component. There is also a large double height rope screen that connects level 1 to level 2, which kind of ties back to the maritime heritage of the site. Next slide. All right. right, so here we are at the top of the stairs, so we're up on level 2 now. Again, you're seeing that screen element. There is also a similar but smaller rope screen element that happens at the restrooms. So we're just looking into the shared sink area, and then as we mentioned, the toilet rooms themselves would be fully enclosed with partitions beyond this. And right here on the right hand side of the image, these would be, again, views out to Bay Street from the upper level, and some really lovely kind of seating at the window, so you could sit there and enjoy views out to Bay Street. Next slide. Here we are looking down kind of that main corridor on level 2. So off to our left, we're seeing the smaller meeting rooms. They have sort of these colored glass elements that pop out into the corridor and make that feel really active. And then on the right side, we're seeing a little glimpse into the large event space, as well as those phone booths that we mentioned right here. Next slide. Here we are standing in the pre-function area. So this is that foldable glass wall that can open up and connect the large event space to this sort of pre-function area. So these spaces can all sort of bleed together for the largest kind of events that would happen here. You're also seeing, again, this kind of slice move that we've talked about that connects Bay Street to the water. So we've looked at it on the Bay Street side, and here it is on the water side. So here's your access out to the deck and really great views of the water. You're also seeing a little hint of that skylight element that we talked about on level 1. So again, the idea that it kind of casts these shadows and is dynamic and changes throughout the day. Next slide. Here we are looking into the event space itself. So the wall that goes down the center and can divide it into 2 smaller spaces is what you're seeing kind of right here with this softened condition. Views and doors out to the water and the deck. Overall, a really neutral palette in the space so that it's super flexible for any type of event that might happen here. Another thing of note in this room is the ceiling elements. So these are for some acoustic absorption, but we didn't want to cover up the beautiful, exposed wood structure that we have in the space, so they're sort of transparent and you still sort of see hints of the wood above. Next slide. Go to the next slide, please. So to talk just for a moment specifically about the feature wall that I sort of alluded to earlier, highlighted in pink here is where that feature wall occurs. It connects that double height space. We've been working with an environmental graphics consultant to kind of iron out some of the details for this. So we can go to the next slide, please. So here it is in elevation. At its kind of simplest form, it's a topographic map of Sinclair Inlet. It has different layers of wood that represent the topography, and then blue resin material that represents the different depths of the water. This will be, sort of reflective in the sunlight that we know is coming through the skylight. And then we can go to the next slide, please.
Can you point to where we are on the inlet?
And which way's north? Yeah.
Because
The right side is
Right there.
No, I know where we are. I'm saying
It is turned, yeah.
That's gonna be the question
Yeah.
that they're gonna ask, kids are gonna ask on a regular
Put it on.
basis.
There's gonna be, what we talked about, yeah.
We've got one more slide.
She's
We're gonna get
gonna,
to it.
but you can see the scale, how big this thing is in comparison to
No,
the
I
person.
understand, I've yet to see it.
Maybe we should say we are here.
One more slide, and I'm certain it'll answer your question.
So where we got to in the last round with this consultant is sort of the big idea. But what we haven't done yet and what we're just digging into now is sort of what is that next layer of information on the map. So, at a distance, it's just this kind of abstracted, topographic map. But we are looking at adding layers to this. So different sites like the event center, like the shipyard.
Sure.
The cities, the communities, we talked about at one point that the light would change and potentially where there's residences and things will show up, and so it changes with light potentially is some of the ideas that are being bandied around. But yes, geographic locations should.
That's gonna be the question, right?
Yeah.
Someone's gonna ask right away, is where are we located?
Yes,
On that.
yes,
And that will, certainly be identified.
yes. Us, Bremerton, the shipyard.
Yeah, I like the simplicity of this, but I would understand where people wanna know where Bremerton
Yeah.
is, Portage and all
Yeah.
that. But I think adding a compass rose would also be nice
Yeah.
as well.
So north is like this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, like Leah said, we're kind of just now digging into what are the other layers of information, history, story that we want to tell with this. And I think there's gonna be an element of it that'll be graphical and on it that you'll see during the day. And then if you come here at night, we're also thinking about things that could turn on with lights. So you might see a different set of information displayed if you're here for a wedding than if you were there visiting the library.
Yeah, it would be great to see what that looks like before we decide on something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, they just, it was out 2 weeks ago, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
And really just kind of kicked this back off and with the consultant that's
Has the
doing that.
consultant designed something like this before? And
Yes.
is it worth going
Yeah.
to see, or?
Yeah, and this is really gonna be commissioning a piece of art
Yeah.
versus, we've gotta be careful with this. We don't want low bid on this.
Right.
We've got, and we've researched that, if we commission it as a piece of artwork, then we can select somebody, and there's only a couple of people that they're aware of that can do this type of artwork.
There's, not to this, to the, how nice you want it, Mayor, but one of the ferries has a topographical map
Yeah,
like
I've seen
this
it. Yeah.
that really looks cool. So
Yeah.
where you're talking about adding the features of locations and stuff,
Yeah.
I like the idea of this, especially on the scale. So this is, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and we'll be bringing back, as those ideas are flushed out, to bring some of those concepts back to you.
Yeah, when you talk about lighting up residences and stuff like that, then it starts to get a little busier, but maybe it's pretty cool looking, so,
Yeah. They're all just ideas at this point.
yeah.
The paint kind of looks flat. Is there like shiny paint that might make it pop a little bit more?
Well, yeah,
So the idea
Well,
is.
the brown is wood, it's
Yeah.
layers of wood.
These are
Okay.
wood elements, and then the idea is that the blue is like a resinous sort of material.
You
So
seem
when
like
light hits it, it
Pen
sort of shimmers like water.
yeah, so it'll be a transparent thing, and then when you get the layering of the multiple shades of blue, I think it's gonna be kind of a really rich appearance, especially when you light it up with a light, but then it'll have a shimmer to it too during the day.
It's gonna be somewhat three-dimensional because all those little
Layers,
layers,
yeah.
the topography that it's representing is gonna show those mild slopes along that map.
Here it looks flat, but the ones that I've
Yeah.
seen before are, I mean, they've got depth to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to one more slide, it kind of shows more of an install image there in the middle.
Yeah.
You can see kind of some of that with that would be more of a resin that's been illuminated with a light.
Even
Very cool.
epoxy tables
Mhm.
that they do
Yeah.
shows that on them.
Right.
Yeah, that's the sort of
Could
material.
imagine a wall, yeah, for sure.
Couple more questions. How strong is the rope on the rope screen?
We are currently in the midst of detailing that right now. It's a thick, heavy rope that doesn't have too much give to it. So we're looking at like 1.5 inch diameter
Do you
roughly.
think it's gonna attract people to try to climb it?
It'd be pretty difficult to climb, seeing as it's,
Maybe a kid, but no.
Well, it is partly kids' library. Also, I love this room, but are we concerned about people who've been drinking, walking right into the glass? Is that what the waist size bar is for?
I think the bar that you're seeing is just, maybe, do we want to flip back a couple of slides so we can all see this on the,
Yeah, there you go.
Because
Just
these are
there.
floor to ceiling glass, right?
They are floor to
Yeah.
ceiling, yeah, so, there is a horizontal, mullion divider of the glass here. Obviously where you have doors, you won't have that,
Okay.
but there will be,
So it's like a
door hardware.
railing to prevent people from walking into it.
And it just breaks up the glass too. It's tied into some of the other patterns that we have on the rest of the building. So it's a pretty uniform building, like where the wood panels on the exterior, they line up with a lot of those horizontal elements. And it just kind of breaks the glass down into sheets of glass that are a little easier to fabricate. But yeah, I think it would also act as kind of a visual cue to keep
Not
someone
walk through
from
it, yeah.
walking through it, yeah.
Good question.
It should be, probably tempered glass anyway.
It will be,
Yeah,
yes.
so you wouldn't be able to walk through it.
Yeah.
Walk into it, you might hurt yourself, but you won't hurt the glass.
It's not, yeah,
I
it's not
think
about
that
you.
was the last slide.
That's it. Okay, a lot of information, I know.
This is terrific though, I like this.
Okay. And there's still elements like the plaza and this artwork that we, as those are you know, building's been designed for a few years. They're just now getting to the point where they're doing the documents so we can go out to bid. And also later this fall, no later than this winter, to be able to get, we have one funding in our PFD for our one last cost estimate. So it's been a few years since we've done a cost estimate, and I'm certain the price has gone up. So we'll have that information well ahead of us going out to bid.
So, just so I'm prepared, because John brought up some good points, like, so previous council, they approved, they approved, we approved joint bathrooms, they approved,
We've
The
shared all,
price,
we've
yes.
shared all these costs, costs.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
we had multiple meetings on this stuff.
no, just asking, yeah.
And I would say we applied for the building permits for this to be under the previous building codes. So we have a vested building permit application under the
Current energy code.
What's that?
2021 codes or 2018? 2018 codes. And so that was applied for in June of 2023. And we're about $500,000, I think, right now into the construction documents phase of the design.
I don't remember, yes.
I just signed an invoice today,
Yeah.
so that's what we've spent so far, is a little under $500,000.
Okay. A lot of information, I know.
So it was all presented to city council before we had that long pause, as we were waiting for the shoreline reviews happening.
I think there's a lot of flexibility too into this building for future use, and I think that's probably a good thing. So, you know,
Well, we have nothing like it in Port Orchard.
No.
And it was never meant to be a super capacity
No,
building.
it wasn't intended to compete with Bremerton's Conference Center. It's
No.
much bigger than this. It's, you know, we other than McCormick Woods,
No.
which is a decent sized facility, this is a big, it's ours on the waterfront.
That's right.
Yes.
We did consider that Bremerton Conference Center as
Yeah.
part of this conversation, that we're not gonna try to do what they have, because that's already nearby, not be a competition.
This will have it'll be a more enjoyable space though, I think, have a lot more character, better location in
More
terms of the
intimate,
waterfront.
And part of this too is we want something more for our downtown, and we're gonna be the catalyst in this project, or the catalyst for that reimagining of our downtown.
Well, and Kitsap Bank, bringing
Yes,
more
and
workers.
they're a very integral piece of this too, and the Orchard Street Plaza. So,
Might see a change in the services offered downtown, maybe more personal services or dining services.
okay, we are about 40 minutes behind, so I'm gonna try to
Thank
get
you
us
for
back.
letting us
And
take
it-
up
But,
the time.
you know, it's good information.
Leave this here.
Yeah,
Appreciate you guys.
All right, thank you.
yep, all right. And Shelley Helder's here for our lobbyist from Gordon Thomas Honeywell. And Shelley's gonna give us an update on the session, what happened at the session. And we're gonna talk about where we could potentially go in the next session. So,
Where do you want me?
right there, right there.
Great,
How about that chair?
It's nice and warm.
Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you for having me. As Mayor Patonci said, I am going to present this evening on outcomes of the 2015 session and kind of start looking ahead to the 2020, did I say 2015?
You did.
I just jumped back 10 years.
We're calling it.
2025, and then we'll look ahead to 2026. You know, I was thinking the last time I was at Port Orchard City Hall presenting to the city council, I think was actually 2015. So maybe that's where my brain went. But good to be back here with you. Well, I guess not many of you were here in 2015, but good to be back here.
Fred and I were.
You and Fred, yes. Does this control that? Or should I just tell you next slide?
Do you mind just send it home?
Okay, that's fine.
It has a mind of its own.
Okay, next slide. I will not touch that then. So my presentation is going to have three components. The first is going to be, as I mentioned, an overview of session outcomes. Next, we'll look ahead, and then I'll wrap up by talking about next steps specifically for the city. So next slide. The 2025 session was the first year of the two-year legislative cycle. First year is always 105 consecutive days. The first year of the biennium is longer because the legislature is responsible for adopting the budgets, which they did.
And then in addition to adopting the budgets, they considered 2,387 bills and passed 433 into law. That is lower than the number of bills that have been passed into law in previous long sessions, with the exclusion of the COVID completely virtual session. Democrats had strong majorities in both chambers. Of the 147 state legislators, there were 24 freshmen this past year, and 9 of those seats are on the ballot this fall for a special election. Since the primary objective of the long session is to adopt budgets, I'm just going to spend a few minutes highlighting major key points from the state's 3 budgets. So the operating budget is the largest of the 3 state budgets. It pays for, of course, day-to-day operations of state agencies and then the K-12 education system. The primary sources of funding for the state's operating budget are state taxes and federal pass-through dollars. This year's operating budget negotiations were uniquely challenging. We entered the session with a $15 billion shortfall over 4 years. That's one of the largest fiscal challenges our state has faced in a decade. In the end, the 2025-27 operating budget is $77.8 billion, and it has $2.3 billion in reserves. In adopting this budget, the legislature passed bills that generate $4.3 billion in new revenue. The largest of that new revenue comes from an increase to the business and occupation tax for some businesses. Not every business received that increase. Since the operating budget was passed, we have now seen a June revenue forecast, and that showed a decline in projected revenue, $720 million over the next 4 years. Despite this, along with the cuts to federal funding, the governor has not called a special session, nor have we even heard rumors of, there are rumors, but not substantiated rumors of a special session. At this point, it appears as though they're going to hold the course and adopt they'll have to amend the biennial budget in 2026 when they reconvene. The capital budget pays for the construction, acquisition, and maintenance of state property. This is the smallest of the 3 budgets and is funded primarily through the sale of bonds. The new capital budget is $7.5 billion. It leaves $349 million in bond capacity for a supplemental budget. For comparison purposes, the previous biennial budget was $9 billion. So this was a much smaller biennial capital budget. The capital budget is the source of funding for local community projects. That's the pot of money that cities most commonly go after for projects. The amount of money that was dedicated to that purpose in this budget was $201 million. Previous budget, it was $231 million. So again, a smaller amount.
And that's of the 7.5 billion.
Correct.
They're gonna give us a lovely.
There's $201 million allocated to local and community projects.
And what did we receive?
1 million.
1 million, yep.
1 million.
Yep, the average appropriation for across that category was 604. So Port Orchard was significantly higher than the average.
I hope so. We're the 7th fastest growing city.
The final budget, the transportation budget, pays for transportation activities. There was a $1 billion shortfall headed into this past session, and so the budget writers had the option to either raise revenue or cut costs, and then in the end they decided to do both. So the transportation budget is $15.5 billion. They delayed the timing of projects as a way to lower costs in the short term, and they adopted legislation that generates $3.2 billion over the next 6 years. The primary source of new revenue for the transportation budget is a new 6-cent gas tax that I'm sure many of us have encountered. It took effect July 1. Of the amount of gas tax that is increased, that just went up, 2.5% is dedicated to cities, 2.5% is dedicated to counties. It is a relatively small amount in the grand scheme of things, but it is something. So, next slide. last fall, the city developed a legislative agenda that identified your top priorities for the 2025 session. The priorities evolved as we learned more about the budget and the political climate. The highest priority was a $3.5 million request to address the funding gap for the Bay Street reconstruction. We knew that the transportation budget was going to be a difficult place to squeeze any dollars out of, and so to increase our chances of securing funding, we relabeled this project to be the Port Orchard Downtown Reconstruction. It made it more competitive for capital budget dollars, which the capital budget writers are very protective over giving money to projects that sound like, smell like anything transportation related. So a new title made it as not transportation. And that strategy was successful. So we ended up with, we did submit both a request in capital and transportation, and in the end we ended up with $1 million in the final capital budget for the project. As I mentioned, 1 million is not 3.5, and that's what we requested. It is also more than what the average amount was, and because the capital budget was smaller this year, many communities did not get anything. So 1 million should be considered a big win, even though it doesn't feel like it. The next priority was really focused on educating lawmakers on municipal water supply challenges. As I mentioned, there were 24 freshman legislators this past session, and 2 of them represented the city. And so even without that level of turnover in the legislature, water supply, water law is a very complex policy area, and I actually don't know any state legislator that they've just decided to make that their issue. It's kind of this hot potato that gets passed around that no one really wants to dive in on. And so really our goal was to get our state legislators up to speed on what's important to us and help them be, and to engage as issues came up. For the most part, it's business as usual when it comes to state water law. The final.
What does that mean?
There were no significant changes to the way that things are operating at the state level when it comes to water rights. So the city is still in the process of participating in the Foster pilot project.
But somewhere in here, something needs to move.
Correct.
I mean,
When
something needs to move.
Yes, we'll get to that. Yes. We're looking back still. We're going to look forward soon. The final priority was a request for $8 million to improve the intersections at SR 16 and 160. The city would like to see 2 compact roundabouts as an alternative to the current design. I think the reality here is without a change in the way that the state funds transportation projects, we're going to continue to be facing a challenge in funding. There is a growing list of projects that have been funded that continue to be pushed out into the future because the money is not there as expected. And so not only are we at the end of the, we're on the list, we're just on the list of the projects that are unfunded, and even the projects that are funded aren't getting their money. So I share that just to set reasonable expectations that this is going to be one that's difficult to achieve.
I think there's projects that aren't funded that have been approved, and they keep moving.
Exactly.
The target's moving, so
Yes.
they've committed to projects that they don't have money for.
Exactly.
And
That's a better way of saying it.
and that bucket needs to get filled before they're considering any new projects. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're considered a new project, because they've
Correct.
never, I mean,
They've
we're so
never-
far
they've
down
never-
the list right
They've
now.
never committed to our
Right,
project.
and-
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, now, when we approach this, we're approaching this from the standpoint that it's still a state highway.
It is a state highway.
It is state highway,
It's-
yeah, I'm
it's-
just saying
There's
is.
2 of them.
It's a
I
conflict of
understand,
two state
I got that,
highways.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying is, we're trying to put that in their interest, but it's not one that we're,
It's not a priority other than to our representatives in our
Yeah,
district.
so we're not even in the approved phase, so we're even lower down than,
Correct.
I don't even wanna say that.
So how do you guys amp that up? How do you get that moving more for us, like with the water and with the transportation? What do you guys do for us to move that along?
We're going to get there, I promise. But before we get there, I want to just wrap up a few other topics that have already happened. So next slide, thank you. In In addition to your legislative agenda, which has your top priorities, you also have another document called Other Important Topics. I'm going to cover just 3 outcomes. There's a lot that happened in 105 days, so there's no way I'll cover everything, but I want you to be aware of just some of the highlights. On the topic of public safety, the most notable bill that you've probably already heard about is House Bill 2015. It provides councilmanic authority to increase sales tax by 0.1% to be used for criminal justice purposes, and it allocates $100 million in grant capacity for increasing law enforcement officers. So that's the good. The challenge when it came to public safety is that in balancing the operating budget, historically the state has required 25% cost share of jurisdictions that send officers to the basic law enforcement academy. In the last budget cycle, they eliminated the cost share requirement so that the state covered 100%. In this budget, the cost share came back. So not great because it does increase costs a little bit, but it's back to the way that it used to be. On housing and homelessness, there were, I may not even know how many bills on this topic, but one that would have resulted in a mandate on the city is Senate Bill 5184 regarding statewide parking minimums. And the bill did pass the legislature, but we were successful in having it amended to only apply to jurisdictions of 30,000 population or greater. So the provisions in the bill do not apply to Port Orchard and other smaller cities. We also raised concerns with unintended consequences of House Bill 1380, which was envisioned to provide rights to individuals experiencing homelessness, but in reality would have increased the liability exposure for many jurisdictions, particularly those that choose to have an ordinance that regulates the use of public spaces. So this bill did not pass in 2025. I do expect it will return in 2026, either in the exact same version or in some modified way. The final policy area that I want to touch on is infrastructure funding. In the development of the capital and the transportation budget, the budget writers proposed to divert the payments that go into the Public Works Assistance account. That would have undermined the account's ongoing sustainability. We were successful in killing that idea, so the payments are still going into the account. The account will remain strong. They did sweep $288 million from the account to use to balance the operating budget. So that's not good, but it is a one-time sweep, not an ongoing diversion of payments. They backfilled that sweep with increased bond capacity, and so according to the Public Works Board, there should not be a change in the availability of grants and loans moving forward.
It's important too in these last 2 topics, in the housing and homelessness mandates. It's been an ongoing theme for a number of sessions that we've been paying defense. There have been so many bills passed and so many other really bad bills that are one size fits all. And Shelley and her team and myself, and the AWC team, we've been really playing defense on this stuff. And the same way with the infrastructure money, some of the things that were proposed early on were very devastating to this and seem to be just about every year. And next year, this next session, that pot of money, could easily go away, and we got to play defense on that and make sure that doesn't happen. Because as John said, we're a very fast-growing city. We need, grants and low-interest loans to fund our infrastructure. Otherwise, we've got to go out and borrow money at much higher rates. So these programs are vital to our city.
Yeah, I think the bottom line when it comes to infrastructure is nothing new was added, but nothing was taken away either. So we're same place we were. Next slide. Okay, so now shifting forward to looking ahead at the 2026 session. It's going to be the second year of the legislative cycle, which means it'll be 60 days. And the primary objective of the legislature is going to be to modify their existing budgets. And these are going to be modifications that are necessary, not massive overhauls. As we have seen in side, we are almost certain to see more cuts given the recent revenue forecast and the reduction in federal funding. The governor has already issued a request to state agencies asking for new proposals to lower costs. The capital budget has very minimal bonding capacity. I mentioned there's $349 million. That's for all the needs across the state from K through 12 education, higher education, every state facility. Like $349 million is like nothing. There will be some federal funding that amplifies that amount, so we will see the budget next year be a little bit bigger than $349 million, but capital will be very constrained. Similar to the transportation budget, the transportation budget is going to be focused on completing the projects that have already been obligated. This year, there were 3 priorities the budget writers identified: finish what we start, maintenance and preservation of state systems so that costs don't exponentially grow as they already have for many portions of state highways, and addressing the state's obligation for fish culverts. So I have not heard, but I imagine those 3 will remain priorities in the supplemental.
And to Eric's point about Sedgwick and Sydney, or excuse me, the 2 highways and the Sedgwick interchange, we, as long as I've been mayor, have had that on our legislative agenda so that we're constantly talking about it and we're not forgotten. So it's going to take a transportation package, you know, one of these big transportation packages, and we want to be noisy, continue to be noisy about this so that we're not left behind when that next transportation package is put together. And we, 2 sessions ago, maybe it was 3, there was a transportation package proposed. Our project was in it, but that package didn't get approved. And so it's every 8 to 10 years or so, you'll see one of these mega packages, and what the state is dealing with is the unfinished projects from the last package now have grown so much that they're not entertaining that next big package because they're wanting to finish what they've started. So it's important for us is keep that conversation going, make sure not just our delegation, but everybody hears that, you know, we've got this project, we've been around, we've been talking about it for 10 years, it's our turn, but it's gonna take one of those big transportation packages getting approved and us being part of it.
Well, where do they get the money for that? If they don't have money from what they already have.
That is a challenge.
I don't ever foresee one of those packages coming again. This is what I'm trying to get at.
They're gonna, whether it be road usage charge or whatever the funding, there'll be something.
There'll be increased tax and stuff.
Probably.
Which they call revenue,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
taxes increase.
And right or wrong, we want our piece of that, if and when it happens.
I don't want us to have a wish that never gets fulfilled, and,
Unless we wanna fund it locally.
Well, I hear that, no, but I'm just saying, like, I don't want that to be our only avenue
I
for
just feel like we were
success.
skunked last year. I feel like we're getting skunked this year.
Well, we were skunked. We got $1 million in capital dollars.
Yeah.
That's a huge
That's
success.
a huge win.
A lot of communities got nothing.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do down in Olympia is making sure bad things don't happen to us.
But I think, for sure, I agree. But
I think your frustration is the same frustration previous councils have had. These are state highways, and that impact our city.
Correct.
And we feel like we're the red steps up, and that's very frustrating because, as you pointed out, John, without revenue, and the mayor said it, it's up to us, and we don't have the funds to do
Well,
it.
yeah, and I think my frustration is we're the 7th fastest growing city. Oh, by the way, the first 6 are under 3,500 people. We're the 14th fastest when it comes to numbers. Oh, by the way, all 13 of those ahead of us are larger, with the smallest being 42,000 out of
The impact that we're.
Right. You placed GMA forced upon us, right? And so now we have no operation, we're forced to grow with no way to pay for it, and don't have the infrastructure to support it. And you're not gonna give us the fair dollars coming with the people who are moving to our area.
And there's certain things they can do, like Mark Schneider pointed out, why don't they bring back that off-ramp by Bethel Towing that used to be there years ago? That would alleviate a lot of traffic off of that.
And if
off that
we, if we
corridor.
annex
So
that,
certain things,
yeah.
there's certain things that that the state can do.
Yeah.
You know,
It's tough for us to advocate for that, because that's a great idea.
I mean,
When we annex Bethel South, that's in our wheelhouse, because that's a way
it's
cheaper
counter right
alternative.
now, I understand that, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's really impacting.
What we can do, if we don't wanna fund that ourselves, is what we're doing. We built the Tremont corridor, and we're building Bethel out, and we will move traffic,
Keep
not
going
from,
Bethel out, right?
yeah, and then get people out Tremont, because
Yeah,
I don't see the state solving this problem in the short run at all.
No,
Yeah, so,
beat that horse.
yes, we did. Sorry, Shelley.
No, it's good discussion. So on the policy side of things, any bill that was introduced this past year that did not pass will be automatically reconsidered in 2026. We developed a list of those bills that are relevant to city governance, so that is included in your council packet for your awareness. At a very high level, I expect to continue to see bills that try to address the state's housing shortage by proposing changes to land use and zoning in an attempt to lower construction costs. That has been the theme of the last 6 to 8 years of the legislative sessions.
What kind of proposals do you see coming beyond what's already been mandated, or?
It's a great question. We've already done a lot.
Yeah.
A couple that we saw last year that did not pass, there was a bill that would have required every single-family residence to allow a mobile dwelling on the property. There was, what's another
Is
one?
that different than the ADU thing?
That's different,
was.
yeah. Mobile dwelling would be like a
RVs,
RV,
right, okay.
We're in
yeah.
multiple committee meetings, they had that.
Yeah. Neighborhood cafes is a bill that's been bouncing
Yeah,
around
I think
quite a
that
bit.
one's
I
intriguing.
think that one is, there's actually a lot of support for that one. So that one's one that I think kind of divides the city family a little bit.
And it trumps HOAs too.
Yeah, that one as it's drafted would.
Ooh, hey, easy,
Wow.
What is a neighborhood cafe?
It's basically like being allowed to have a coffee shop on
You
your
can
corner
convert part of
property.
your house to a.
There's a good article in the Times today about it.
Yeah,
Because
did you
like,
send an article?
Seattle,
Okay.
talking about this and how they're changing no requirement for parking.
Right, yeah.
Interesting.
Right, although I think the one you were talking about had parking as part of its consideration.
I think it gave flexibility to the local jurisdiction to determine parking.
And I think Seattle is moving forward with that parking.
I think Eric, I think we're gonna start seeing HOAs starting to get trumped.
So, yeah.
I'm just
saying.
But it's, once again, as many of these things as they come up, we're
I
paying
can't think of any
defense.
others off the top of my head, but in your council packet, there's a list of the bills that we identified.
I think I
that would
emailed
come back.
that to you,
Yeah,
actually.
It was separate, he signed.
I sent you an email
This one.
last week.
This one.
that one, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing what we can do with our zoning controls any more than we've already done for.
Oh, they
housing.
think of all kinds of things.
Then I think the next one, there's already been quite a bit around permit reform, or like permit timelines. I think they're still wanting to do more there, there's always bills about impact fees. There's a lot of creativity out there. And unless we are showing up explaining like, this is a really bad idea, like, look how this would play out. They fly through. All of a sudden it's through committee, into the rules, on the floor, and out the other chamber, and you're like, wait, it was,
We saw that with parking.
yeah. So as Mayor said, there's a lot of defense that we end up having to play, just as cities. And oftentimes there are unique impacts to different cities depending on your growth or your proximity to transit. Like there's a lot of factors that we consider when we analyze that legislation. So at this point, despite the slowing revenue, I do not expect the state to adopt new revenue or new taxes in 2026 for two reasons. First, they just did it in 2025. They did both new taxes for balanced operating budget and transportation budget. And 2026 will be an election year for the entire House and half of the Senate. So I do not foresee that. I could be wrong, but that's my prediction. Next slide. So I thought it may be helpful just to note that the Association of Washington Cities, who we coordinate with closely, is in the middle of developing its legislative priorities for 2026.
And I sit on this committee.
Yes, so the association has a legislative priorities committee. It's comprised of mostly elected officials, both large and small, east and west. Mayor Tansu sits on the legislative priorities committee, which is a huge benefit to the city because not every, as you can imagine, not all 281 cities are represented.
It's about 40 of us, I think, 30, 40. It's a big,
Yeah.
it's a big group, but it's not everybody.
Right.
There's 281 cities in our state.
Yeah, so that committee work began in May. They've also conducted a survey of their membership. They've solicited input from their small cities advisory committee, their large cities advisory committee. The legislative priorities committee had their second meeting in Kennewick a couple weeks ago. And they're in the stage right now where staff is reviewing, researching the feedback that the committees have given them. They'll hold another priorities committee meeting in the fall, and then that committee will recommend those priorities to the AWC board, who is the decision-making authority for the association. So what we see when the AWC develops those priorities are hopefully a reflection of the membership and the issues that they want to see the association work on.
And it's important in that process, remember, we're with 281 cities that we're representing, and we can't represent, you know, we're looking for core issues that resonate with everybody, you know, and so, and building consensus from that standpoint.
Yep. So next slide. So as we think about the city's priorities for next year, I wanted to just share a couple reminders of what to consider when developing an agenda. So the supplemental sessions are for small changes to the budgets. And they're not necessarily for new requests unless the requests are new, like emergent and very time sensitive. Successful funding requests tend to be ones that the state is going to be the last dollar in, and have full support from the legislative delegation, and like basically everything's ready to go. All they have to do is just tap the ball into the hole. Line them up for success. When considering policy requests, a key question to ask is, does the city have a unique story to tell, or a unique challenge that it's facing? So, for example, talking about fiscal sustainability, that's not unique to Port Orchard. That is standard across all local government. That's something that the association may focus on. But what is unique to the city is water supply. That's a unique challenge. So that would be something that we could focus on. I think above all, we want to make sure that we are coordinating with the city's legislative delegation. So as we're going through the process of identifying and then finalizing, that we're coordinating with them, and that these are priorities that they feel like they can carry forward on our behalf. Next slide. So, okay, what are our next steps? We are roughly 6 months away from the start of the 2026 session. And so we have a few key things that we need to accomplish between now and then. The process starts by identifying what the city's needs are. Again, since this is going to be the second year of the biennium, it's not the time to come in with a long list of needs. It's what are the top 2 or 3 things that are really important. Once you've identified the top needs, then we work to figure out, okay, where does this fit in? Is this transportation? Is this capital? Is this a policy request? Is this something we need to do in coordination with another jurisdiction? And then we coordinate with the city's legislators to make sure that, given the committees they sit on and the issues that they have experience in, that we can support them in advocating for the city's priorities. So that's kind of the goal between September and October, and then November, December timeframe is when you all would finalize those priorities, and we would have a final legislative agenda adopted before the end of the calendar year.
So what do you guys do, is it called the off season?
The interim is what we call it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do to get in their ear about the water rights during the
here's the challenge that we face with.
I was here to answer the question.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I think the bottom line is have conversations. Representative Richards is of the three, the one that has reached out and has said like, hey, I have a lot to learn on this topic, and I want to better understand this because I know this is important to my district.
Right.
And so meeting with him, I'm not an expert on water, so it's a matter of connecting our legislators with the experts and making sure that the information flow is happening in the interim, because during the session,
Correct.
good things are happening fast.
There's
We need
a
to make
lot,
sure those connections
thousand
are
topics
already
going
set.
on, right?
Yeah.
So, besides him though, we're not the only people in the state
No.
that see it, that has these concerns.
Yeah.
Well,
So you've got
to be,
conversations.
it's
Yes.
really gonna take a city much bigger than us having these problems to get some attention down there. And not this past year, but a session ago, when we were working with Josh and I must have met with 20+ legislators. And the ecology and the tribes control this process. And we have this litigation that happened, and nobody, to the person, we talked to, they don't wanna take the tribes on. That was bottom line what we got told. And it's gonna, this is a huge deal to us, but until somebody much larger than us, has, the water, this is gonna get solved.
So you're saying
But-
Spokane, something has to happen.
It didn't have to be Spokane.
I'm
It's
saying
gonna-
a large,
a much larger
city.
city.
Second largest, but I mean like.
Yeah, and I think this is gonna come to a head, it's gonna get solved, but I think we're so far down the track on this, I mean, we're negotiating right now with the tribes, it's going pretty well. I think we're gonna solve our problem before the global fix happens, and it's unfortunate, because we wanted to make our process easier and have a global fix, and it didn't happen. And so I think we're gonna get our water rights, and it's in this adaptive model that Dennis has been working with and with our, I think it's gonna happen before this thing gets fixed globally, unfortunately.
And we signed up for the pilot program to get ahead of the game. And this has just
Yeah.
gone on and on and on. Some of the reasons that you talked about, that new people all the time, and you'd think that it would be resolved by now.
Yeah, it continues to show up. I just
It
don't
does.
understand how water rights and development and how fast Washington State, and especially the Puget Sound and the peninsula, how fast we're growing, how is it not recognized as a higher priority, on the list of things to improve? I mean, I don't even know how many dollars that would actually cost the state.
I'm not laughing at you. I remember a guy who had a sign on his desk that says, just because it's an emergency on your part, doesn't make it an emergency on my part.
But I don't-
And that's how I feel about the
I
water rights.
just don't see how the water rights is costing the state a lot of dollars. It's gonna cost us dollars to mitigate with other tribes and municipalities. I don't see how it's even cost.
It was litigation.
Correct.
This is the outcomes of the litigation,
Yeah.
and the state, to this point, hasn't wanted to address it.
And I know I'm talking to a wall right now, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, it's just.
It's frustrating.
Well,
It doesn't make sense.
If I-
And they know more than.
If I could chime in, I think that the majority of the population in the state is represented in the central Puget Sound, and the regional growth strategy of PSRC says that we're supposed to be putting growth into the metro cities, so Seattle, Bellevue, Everett, Tacoma, Bremerton. Those older cities have the most senior water rights in the state, and so they're not the ones who are having water problems. It's the outlying cities that were founded later that have junior water rights and are now growing fast because it's undeveloped land and it's sprawling development. But I think the legislators in the core of the Puget Sound are trying to implement what PSRC has mapped out as where the growth is supposed to go.
But if the drought continues, Eric, there may be some movement, because they're
Right.
having some real problems over on the east side.
Like, we're doing our part, we're putting forth the dollars, we're doing everything that's
Yeah.
required.
With
I just don't
access
see
to
how
potable water.
it's not costing the state dollars to
The
address
droughts
it.
Fortunately, we're in the foster pilot program, because if we weren't, we wouldn't have a path, even though this is painful and slow.
And fortunately, you have a developer who's willing to drill
Right, once we get those water rights
and
for
do
them.
everything that's required,
Yeah,
on our side too, so.
yeah.
If we talk about moratorium, would that get anyone's attention?
Sounds like we just need a lesson on how to get people's attention.
There's
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
That's what I was saying, in the off-season, which we're not calling the off-season.
Off-season.
We're calling something else.
We call it the off-season, that's fine.
Interim, like, how are we getting their attention? What can we do? Like, what's the conversation pieces? I mean, I would think that
An
needs
article, an op-ed, something in the Seattle
Jay would
Times.
say we're beating this dead horse pretty good, but, I just don't, I don't.
Fortunately, we have some capital projects, like the intertie between the two systems, that'll get us many years down the road, and make us more self-sufficient than we are today. But long-term, we've gotta have those water rights, there's no doubt about it.
For sure.
Yeah, and this, Shelley, you have more to?
No, actually, this is the last slide. The
So-
next slide just says questions.
Yeah, and so, obviously, we need to have Shelley back, because we need to adopt, I think another work study, whether it be September.
Whiteboard this, so that.
Yeah, to talk about, things I think I would recommend we continue to keep, the Sedgwick and Sydney roundabouts on our agenda, even though it's just probably conversation and making sure, don't forget about us for that when that package comes. And then we really need to pick a capital project. And a couple that come to mind for me are, we'll be about ready to go to construction of the community center. I think we asked for a few million, and we'll probably be lucky if we get $1 million, but that's something. We could ask for money for that intertie, but we've got a loan application in for that, and have provided the monies in the Public Works Trust Funds accounts. We can get a very low interest loan. We have a source of repayment for it, so, the capital is really a grant, or is award, an award that we don't have to pay back. So let's be thinking about that. Jay?
Well, one of the things that I know that our lobbyists have always said, and you said also, is we're much more possibility of getting funds than anything that's shovel-ready. So
Yeah.
my
It's not just shovel ready,
No,
maybe
but-
the last dollar's in.
Yeah, last dollar's in. So my question is, just something for us to think about, is there something that we're close on design or haven't quite finished design that we need to move up to get there,
It's really just the community center, the other things are
Okay.
transportation projects.
Right.
And true transportation
No, I know,
projects
yeah.
will get kicked out of the capital conversation.
All right, I just wanted to ask that because
Yeah.
you've advocated that, so
Yeah.
as a group, and I just wanted to make sure we're there.
Like I said, the two that come top of mind to me are the intertie. That's probably a $5 million project. We don't know exactly sure yet because we're still in design on that. And then Dennis, you got the loan application in, I know, a couple weeks ago.
And it's, the award is in November.
So we'll have some answers ahead of the session. If we don't get funded for the loan, then we definitely are asking for some money there. But if we get approved for the loan, then, our project, likely the community center, unless we come up with something that's better than that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we are out to, request for qualifications for the design, so that'll get us to 100%.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay? So more to come on this.
All right.
All right?
Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm just,
So
Thank you
we
for the
don't
homework
have
with
a
this.
study
Yeah.
session.
Thank you for all this.
correct. So
Oh, you're
Shelley's gonna need to come back either
Yeah,
September or October. And we'll program that into the work.
Or both.
Or could be.
Because we gotta develop that legislative agenda in September, then we have a meeting with our delegation in October.
Yeah,
And approve it.
I don't know that our meeting with the delegation plays into, so we need two actions. One, Shelley's probably coming back in September, so we'll talk about dates.
Because we already have it on the calendar
Or I
for
think-
10 penciled in.
Yeah, and then from there, then it's a business meeting where you guys, or it's part of an agenda item, you guys approving the legislative agenda. So it's a study session, and then an action item thereafter. Then it's talking, now we have our legislative agenda, and it's talking to our delegation about that.
But she's recommending that we meet with the delegation while creating that, so that we're in alignment
I can
with the
see how
things that
that's
are going with the
confusing.
state.
That's like more informal conversations that mayor, myself, if you run into them, it's like, hey, we're thinking about this idea,
2 or 3 of them on the side.
Yeah, so that not necessarily a formal council meeting with the entire delegation.
So we wouldn't want any of their input because they know that one item may be easier than another.
But we do want that input, but I
So
think
it wouldn't be
that's,
beneficial to have them come to a
easy to
meeting.
get that input through phone conversations.
Okay.
Or
Would-
coffee meetings.
Would it be possible also as we get closer, not only to look to what we're advocating, but also know which ones we need to play defense on? Because, so we don't fall the cracks on that, 'cause we usually talk about our priorities, and we might need to look at the ones that are.
Unfortunately, we're typically reactionary to that because we don't know what bills are gonna be introduced until the session starts.
Doesn't AWC play defense for us?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But-
So, and so the kind of the catch-all, what we typically put on our agenda is we support, AWC, we will be supporting AWC's legislative agenda. And
Correct.
once in a while, there's something that AWC is doing that, we don't support, so we won't oppose them, but we'll not advocate on the, so it's until it starts happening, that's.
I don't know, what's appropriate or not, but I will say that, when COVID hit and some of the, defund the police movement hit pursuit, I wrote all our legislators from my personal account about it, and I did hear back from one of our legislator about it, so there is that avenue also that we can do, and, it doesn't hurt either, so, thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Shelley.
you.
And I'm just looking at time here. Nick has another heavy item. I think the last two items on our agenda, I'm gonna need to bring back to the next work study.
I'm down with that.
Yeah,
Can you bring the next council meeting?
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a light
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah.
Randy, can you let me share?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were gonna drive or if you wanted.
Who knows?
Mayor,
Nick could be done in 10
is it-
minutes. But yes, Charlie.
Oh, just wanted to see if you wanted me to hop off then, if you're gonna bump those, but I'm happy to wait.
We'll see how Nick's presentation goes.
So you're bumping MFT?
No, we're doing MFT.
D&E.
T&E, okay.
Maybe.
All right, so, last year, the city council asked me to prepare a discussion of the multifamily tax exemption. And so we were in the middle of our comprehensive plan and our middle housing compliance as well as the development regulations. And so this was put on pause, and when we finished the middle housing work in June, I was able to prioritize this and get it on tonight's agenda for you. I want to start out by outlining the different types of multifamily tax exemption. Previously, there was only an 8-year and a 12-year exemption, with the 8-year mostly being no strings attached. It can go to any project. There's no affordability requirement. The 12-year property tax exemption required that 20% of units be affordable, and that law has now since been amended to also require that cities adopt minimum density requirements for the areas where you're applying the 12-year property tax exemption. There is also now a 20-year property tax exemption, but that is only available to cities that have 15-minute interval transit service, which we are not one of those yet. And so the 20-year option is not available to us. The other big requirement of the MFTE programs is that any designated areas for MFTE projects have to be considered an urban center. The law doesn't define what that is. It requires us to define our urban centers. And so we do have centers identified in our comprehensive plan, but those are, we could choose to use those center boundaries, or we could define centers differently in the MFTE code if we were to bring that back.
What's the length of time on the 12-year?
12 years?
12 years.
For the units must be affordable, so it says in 20 years, it has to be 99 years, it does not go.
Correct. The 12-year exemption is 12 years, and then at the end of 12 years, the 20% of the units can go back to market rate.
So it is 12 months.
Yes. So the other, I want to go over the basics of how the MFTE program works. Essentially, the developer or owner of a project that has been issued an MFTE certificate doesn't pay property tax on the value added to the property for those residential units for either 8, 12, or 20 years. And so the pre-development value of the property, they are still paying tax on that. So if it's raw land, they pay taxes if it's raw land for that interval of time. If it had some units on it and they're savings to the developer and owner is not lost revenue to the city or junior taxing districts. I think this was a source of confusion ever since this program was created. The Department of Commerce published a document on what is tax shift that was included in your packet, and that provided clarity that essentially assessors individually, county by county, have the authority to determine how they're going to administer MFTE. Most of them do what is called a tax shift, where the city isn't losing the revenue of the new project. That added assessed value is redistributed amongst all of the properties within the city evenly. And so the article that was just in the Kitsap Sun explained that in Bremerton, the total cost to a homeowner for every project they've ever done in MFTE that's currently on the books is about $80 per year. I think that that includes Spyglass and some of the big projects in Bremerton. The exact cost to Port Orchard residents is far smaller, and Noah Crocker is online. I had intended to write in a dollar amount for just the Overlook project as an example, and I don't know, Noah, if you can unmute and tell us if you happen to know the approximate value of that or not.
I don't. I'm working with the county to recalculate that based on 2025 values, so I'm hoping to have an answer next time we get together.
Okay, and I think my recollection from our discussion 2 years ago was that it was a pretty small amount, I think less than $20.
I think it was $20 per household is what I remember.
So, so this graphic on the right-hand side here, this is from the What is Tax Shift exhibit, and so there's 3 of these graphics. This is the one that the Kitsap County Assessor has told us that they use, which is they are shifting that tax break to the rest of the tax base. So we've done 7 previous multifamily tax exemptions. Some of those have been built, other ones are under construction, and other ones were approved before we repealed the old program, but have not yet been built. And so I've listed the projects here. The Overlook Apartments was the first project through the gate. We now have the Pottery Creek Phase 2, which was recorded last year, so that is now on the books as a tax exemption property. And then for the 8-year exemptions, the Sedgwick multifamily is on the books. Blueberry, they're just about occupied, or they're just about to get their certificate of occupancy, and so that one will get recorded this year, as well as I think the Plisco Apartments will happen this year. Salmonberry just broke ground, and the Ramsey is still in permitting. It may or may not go forward. We're not sure on that one. So I put together a little case study to kind of illustrate how this works. And fortunately, we have 2 apartment projects that were built relatively close together in proximity, within a few years of each other, both right near the movie theater on Mile Hill. So the Overlook Apartments was our first MFTE project back in 2016, and it was a 12-year exemption. The Paisno Apartments was built, I believe they got occupancy in 2023, and that is near the Taco Bell on Mile Hill in the left-hand image here on the screen. And I just pulled their property tax statements from the assessor's page, and you'll see that the Overlook property is paying about $2,000 a year, which was the assessed value of the raw land that they developed. And so they have a tax exemption now, I believe, for another 6 or 7 years. 2016, so 2028 is when that expires, so actually only 3 years. And then the Paisno Apartments obviously did not receive a multifamily tax exemption, and their annual tax bill is about $126,000 a year. So those projects were built about 6 or 7 years apart from each other.
And that 126,000 is for
all of the districts.
All of the districts. We only get a sliver of that.
Correct. So the Overlook Apartments was 39 units. The Paisno Apartments was 57 units. And so to try to estimate how much savings per unit exists, I just scaled the size of the project, assuming that each unit pays a proportionate amount of sales tax, and figured out that the current tax savings to the Overlook Apartments is about $84,000 per year. That equates to about a little over $1 million over the 12-year period. And then the rent relief that is going to the tenants in that building under the recently repealed framework, which is actually different than the framework that previously existed. But if we continued with our previously adopted affordability requirements, it provides about $2,160 per year in rent savings. That's $17,280 for all of the affordable units in the complex, which is the 8 units.
Could you back up the bus for a second?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that I got this right. The 126 on the property bill, that, okay.
It's on the tax statement there.
Yeah,
Of
this
course, it
is
says
city.
city.
16,000,
Okay.
292.
Yeah, so when we're looking at something like that, we need to really make sure it's apples and apples we're talking about.
And
Okay.
talking about that, is that whole 126,000 or 124,000 shifted onto the other taxpayers, and not just the city's portions, but the whole?
It's everything. It's vacant
Okay.
properties, raw land, apartment complexes, houses, and it's proportionate based on your assessed valuation.
Right, and that amount is shifted to everyone, not just the city's portion of 16,000.
Fire
The whole
portion.
100.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so we get to choose if the fire district's portion is shifted onto other taxpayers?
No, the assessor makes that decision, and our assessor has chosen to do the tax shift, which is most common in Washington. But there is a scenario where all of the taxing districts could forego that revenue, which also means that you're not gaining the 1% cap that goes up annually. You're losing that permanently, and you will not add the value of that building to the tax rolls until the end of the period, at which time then you'll start gaining the 1% annually based on your levy amount.
And is that 1% cap an individual bill, or is that?
No,
that's
it is the total
whole
pie that the
okay.
city is receiving can go up by 1%, and then it is divided proportionately, so your individual tax bill can go up by more than 1%.
Okay.
But the amount that the city or the districts receives is
If
more.
if your house went up 20% and your neighbors went up 10, you'd get a larger portion of that 1%.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah, so the 1%, when we talk about the 1% levy limit, it's not to individual property.
It's to the city's
The whole
total
city's total.
assessment.
Okay.
Yep.
So I could see people misunderstanding, I think their tax bill's only in the 1%.
Right.
And we know it doesn't.
So I think one of the things that is illustrated here that we talked about quite a bit 2 years ago prior to repealing the program was that the savings to the tenant, the $17,280 a year, and the savings to the property owner of $84,000 is a little disproportionate. And so potentially, if the program came back, we would want to be a little bit more aggressive in trying to get a higher discount for tenants while still ensuring that the developer has an incentive to provide those units.
I think
But we'll talk about that more later.
You're probably being nice by saying a little.
Yes.
And thank you for pointing that out, because we didn't have it as clear when we talked about it 2 years ago.
Well, and it helps that we have an adjacent project where we could do this comparison. That didn't exist back in 2023. It was still being finished. So as we consider the multifamily tax exemption, I think there's a number of questions we have to ask ourselves about, whether it should come back or not. And the first and one of the most important is Port Orchard meeting its housing targets? And in our comprehensive plan, we set a growth target for population, which is through the regional growth strategy of PSRC and down through the countywide planning policies, that we're gonna add 10,500 residents between 2020 and 2044. We've already taken a very large chunk out of that, and we are growing at a rate that we should hit our target ahead of that 2024 timeline. So we are 2044, excuse me. And so
They get it right on.
I did the math, and
2024.
even if our growth rate slowed from its current, near 5% growth rate down to 1.6%, we would still meet our growth target. So I think it's probably likely that we're going to exceed our target during that time period. But remember that we're also going to get a new target in 2032, and so when we do our next periodic update to the comprehensive plan, that horizon is going to get pushed out further, and so we'll never actually, we probably won't exceed our target prior to the next comprehensive plan update, and then we'll be given new numbers.
By 2032, you don't think we'll reach it?
We might, but we'll see. So the other aspect of our growth target in the comprehensive plan is illustrated in this graph, and this is a 2024 graph that shows how many housing units have been built at each income level. And so you'll see that the orange hash area is illustrating the number of units in each that are affordable to each income level have been built. We are doing quite well in the 50 to 120 plus AMI range. That's detached houses and down to garden apartments. Anything below 50% is subsidized, and so we're getting very little of that because that's a housing Kitsap type project. But we are producing the types of housing and the mix of housing affordability at the high end of the income range that we're supposed to be. And really, MFTE is going to deliver projects in that 50 to 100% range using the affordable metrics of the multifamily tax exemption. You can't incentive is not powerful enough to get the private market to build houses that are affordable to people at 50% AMI. The project doesn't pencil for that low of a rent because it no longer is worth it to the developer to proceed.
Well, even if there wasn't a developer, Nick, our policies at the state level don't allow for it.
They set the minimum, we can exceed it.
No, I'm saying building that type of home,
Right.
right? Like, we're $118,000 in fees. It's a 30-year mortgage with no money down is $775 a month before I bought any land, any stick, anything to build it all with. If I'm using AMI, I'm probably close to minimum wage. Minimum wage is putting me at just under $3,000 a month. I can't afford this already on just permits and fees.
Right, and there's a slide that goes into the AMI numbers and what our previously repealed program looked like in terms of how much people can make and what they are paying per month. So the second question I pose is, has housing supply stabilized housing prices and rents? And, basic microeconomics, if the supply of housing goes up, the rents should go down. But remember, Port Orchard is part of a larger region, and so if we were out in the middle of eastern Washington and we had no neighbors, that's a very easy thing to predict in the metro area. If Gig Harbor or Bainbridge Island isn't pulling their weight, it skews things a little bit. But I do have some data on this. This is data that I found through the University of Washington, and I've mentioned this when we were talking about population at the last council meeting, but our vacancy rate has recently climbed to about 10%, 10.5%. And so if you look at the vacancy rate for Port Orchard charted going back to 2014, you'll see that it was a slow decline, and it hit the lowest vacancy rate in 2021, which is also when rents were rising really fast because supply was so constrained. And then since then, we've had all kinds of apartments constructed, and the supply of housing, the vacancy rate has gone up. And if you compare that to the average rents, you'll see that rents were climbing pretty steadily as vacancy rates are going down, and then they have sort of flattened out. The Port Orchard is shown in purple here, but I also included the rest of the jurisdictions on the peninsula here to show what rents have done during that period. It's a similar graph for median housing price, with the exception of Bainbridge Island, which really spiked in the last year or so.
Yeah.
Yes?
Who is the yellow and the orange there? It's not on the bottom, I couldn't read it.
I've got Seattle on there, and
Okay.
I apologize, it got cut off. I think the yellow is Seattle, and Paulsbo is on there.
Okay, no, I was just trying to figure it out, because those are two that look like they're increasing their rents on the.
Can we go back a slide?
Yeah.
What, I mean, we had a 6% change quarter over quarter in vacancy, like, what? I didn't see a canvas that showed that, where's the anomaly in the data here?
So when we report to the Office of Financial Management, we report on March, based on the end of March 31st every year, and they crunch the numbers. And so if we issue a bunch of certificates of occupancy on an apartment building that, like the Sedgwick Apartments, the Phase 2 Pottery Creek Apartments is 192 units, that was finalized in March. So we had 192 units, and the state is assuming how fast are those units being rented. And so if we, and they look at the dates of the certificate of occupancy as well. So when we fill out the report, they get every certificate of occupancy that we issued, the number of units, the size of the units, and a date. And so things that were finished in April had 11 months to lease, and things that were finished in March had 1 month to lease. And so they extrapolate what a vacancy rate would be for the city. So I think with this spike, those correspond to.
Oh, I see that, but I mean, we went from Q3 2024 to Q4 and had a 6% increase. I can't wrap my head around that. Even if we had all of the apartments get their certificates of occupancy there, we have over 8,000 housing units. It would take 800 to move 10%, so we'd have to have 400 and a quarter. Did we issue that many permits?
Not issuing certificates of occupancy. So the Overlook Apartments, the Sedgwick multifamily, Pays No Apartments were all finished, plus everything that was built in Stetson Heights and McCormick Woods.
All those got in the same quarter.
A lot of them got done at the end of the reporting year. So it's not necessarily the same quarter, but it's yeah, I mean, it's.
Can you follow up? I want to verify the data. Can you follow up and send us an
I
email
didn't
later?
produce this data, so this is from the University
I know,
of Washington.
I want to make sure that we're operating off of accurate data. So if that's the case,
I'll
can you just?
send you the source.
The certs of, or just send us what we actually did in certificates of occupancy from
Okay.
Q3 to Q4.
Yeah.
Please.
All right, any further questions about the graphs here? All right, so the next question that I want you to think about is what types of buildings are being developed and which kinds are not being developed. So the types of buildings that we are really not seeing a lot of, middle housing has been difficult, especially small-scale projects where maybe you have a code enforcement house or a rundown property in Port Orchard, and it's zoned such that you could put 6 units in the place of 1 house. Though we're not seeing a lot of redevelopment of that sort within the city. Previously, our MFTE program had a minimum unit count of 10, so the law allows you to go down to 4. It's got to be more than 4, so a 5-unit building can qualify for it. But we just don't see these types of projects in Port Orchard, and so that infill development isn't happening. Mixed-use shopfront buildings, which is one of the building types in our zoning code, we do have the 429 Bay Street project, which was permitted in 2018 and is finally being built. And then the Ramsey Apartments on Sedgwick at the Starbucks, they have a contract with the city for an MFTE certificate, and they've been doing revisions to their building plans. That may go forward, it may not. It doesn't seem like they're in a huge hurry to get permits issued, and so I'm not sure that one will happen, but otherwise we have not seen mixed-use type buildings.
Nick, if they drop the mixed use from their permit, would they still get the MFTE?
They would. But the benefit of the mixed-use project is that in addition to paying for the existing assessed value for either the 8 or the 12 years, if they add commercial space, they're gonna pay tax on the commercial space during that time as well. So it's a little bit better deal for the city. The other thing that we haven't seen anything of other than housing Kitsap projects are affordable ownership projects. And so MFTE does qualify for units that are sold as well as units that are rented. So that's something that we may want to look at. Apartments with underground parking, other than the 2 mixed-use buildings, the 429 Bay Street, which is actually not underground, it's under the building, but at grade. And then the Ramsey apartment does have building parking proposed beneath the building that's partially underground. That's not happening. We haven't seen any apartment buildings taller than 3 stories. The 429 Bay Street is 3 over a parking deck, but it becomes more expensive once you're looking at elevators and the type of construction versus your typical garden apartment. And then we're not seeing downtown redevelopment.
What about the ones by the high school, the baseball
Plisco.
field right there?
The Plisco apartment.
So it's called?
Yeah.
They have the parking below that as well, yeah?
They have individual garages, but it's
Oh, they're
like,
garages.
it's like 12, or like 20% of the parking stalls, and they're individual garages with a private garage door.
I didn't know, I thought it was just parking.
Yeah. So,
Heidi, you had a question.
yeah,
Is McCormick Woods all plotted out? So there's no more new growth. It's all
no,
ready to
there
go.
there are still vacant parcels out there that have not been entitled, and there are pending entitlements at McCormick Woods, but a lot of it has been platted out. But as far as MFTE goes, we never designated any areas of McCormick Woods as being eligible for this program.
Mhm.
So the question, what types of housing is being developed? Obviously, we have a ton of detached homes. Those do not qualify for MFTE. Garden apartments are the, almost all of our MFTE certificates have gone to those 3-story with surface parking type projects. We had 656 units that had been approved with multifamily tax exemption. 889 have been built without it. So unless you have a really difficult site or high infrastructure cost, garden apartments seem to pencil at 3 stories without the tax incentive. And so, the question is, should we be giving a tax incentive to something that's otherwise economically viable? I think that's worth discussing. And then finally, we are seeing the middle housing at McCormick Village, which is kind of a unique master plan area, but that was not in an MFTE eligible area. It's also got its own special overlay district, and it is rental housing, not for sale. And so, ideally, we would see some middle housing that is for sale type units.
How many units are around there?
I think it's about 400. The second and third phase of that project still have to go to the hearing examiner, so I don't have a final unit count until we have final plans.
400 rentals is a lot.
Yep. So, as far as the affordable units, I mentioned that we've done a handful of projects first table on the top here, based on whether it's an efficiency studio unit or a 2-bedroom or a 4-bedroom, shows what the maximum rent that could be charged in 2025 for those units, and then you have to subtract the utility allowance because the utilities are included in that upper column. Not only did they have to be rented below market rates, but there were income limitations, so those units had to be reserved for people who were making a certain percentage below median income. So for studio units, you couldn't rent it to somebody making more than 40% median income, and so and one of the things we ran into with the Pottery Creek phase 1 or 2, I forget which project, they were actually having trouble finding people whose income was low enough who could actually afford the minimum rent. Eventually, those were the slowest units to be taken up, but they have now rented all of their affordable units. The larger units, they didn't have that same difficulty, but I think the question here is, were we getting enough value to justify the tax shift that is in place for those types of units? I would say probably not, and that the affordability limit, if the 12-year exemption comes back, needs to be more aggressive. So the pros and cons of MFTE, I think the pros are that increasing housing supply helps to prevent rent increases because it's basic microeconomics. If the growth rate in Port Orchard were to exceed the rate that we're building housing units, rents and prices are going to go up, and if they're balanced, they should stay stable, and if we're building too much housing, that's going to drive prices down, assuming that things regionally in Gig Harbor and Silverdale and other places we're not making up for their shortfall. I think that the 12-year exemption, a benefit is that it does provide rent relief to tenants, although how much rent relief is up for debate. It helps the city achieve its goals. So we want development to occur in certain parts of the city. We want downtown redevelopment. We want growth in centers. And so using the MFTE tool can help encourage things to happen where we want it to happen and also where we're making infrastructure investments. Some projects are not going to pencil without MFTE, and we have 423 units of apartments that are permitted but don't seem to be moving forward, and that's either because they have difficult to develop sites, they have to extend utilities or make road improvements. There are costs associated with those projects which are a little bit unique from other projects. We also get new infrastructure, so when projects go in, putting in sidewalks, making road improvements, we don't get those improvements if the development doesn't happen. And I think that MFTE can be structured so that it actually gives us kind of a win-win. The developer gets a benefit, but the city is actually more fiscally sustainable long-term. So the cons, obviously shifting taxes to existing residents, I think is not probably something that a lot of people would say they want unless they really understand the benefits to them and the city in doing that. But I think that's probably a tough sell. And also the 12-year exemption, there is a high administrative cost because we have to do annual reporting. There's an annual audit now. There's the utility allowance has to be calculated every year, and so you're looking at each contract for each project and having to send out a report to them saying this is your utility allowance to allow them to establish a fixed rent within their lease. There's contract administration for all of these projects, whether it's affordable or not, and we have to process these applications. They have to go to the city council. It's a contract that goes through our city attorney's office. So there is a lot of work to running this program. So the recommendations from staff, I think that if you're going to bring back an 8-year program, I think that it should be targeted towards the things that make Port Orchard more fiscally sustainable long-term and that help us implement our goals. So mixed-use shopfront buildings, those are going to have commercial ground floor uses, which are going to pay taxes on that space immediately and will not be shifted to other property owners. Apartments with underground parking are inherently going to be more dense, and so either setting a density limit or a requirement that there be structured parking, that's going to result in a project that is more valuable, and that when it comes onto the tax rolls fully, it is generating more income than what we would get from a garden apartment project, which is all that the market seems to be able to produce right now. I think encouraging that small infill development in areas like around the county courthouse and Gibbons Park, there are some opportunities there. We've identified park-oriented development as one of the goals in the comprehensive plan. And so opening it up to those small projects, because there are not economies of scale for a small project in the same way that you can get out of a project with 100 or 200 units. Projects where the units are for sale, I think we're see a lot of condos built, we haven't seen many townhomes that are ownership units built, they're all rentals. And so I think incentivizing ownership opportunities for those middle housing types would be helpful. And then projects taller than 3 stories, it is more expensive per square foot to build a 4 or a 5-story building. Even though you get more units, the builder is going to go with the lowest square footage construction cost every time. And so I think that it is a benefit to the city to get those taller buildings. And I would look at it as an investment, and if you pass an 8-year MFTE program, you're really, and you target those specific types of projects, the goal would be to see long-term revenues be higher than what would otherwise occur if you don't have an MFTE program in place. And I would go back to the Pay-as-No Apartments, which is in the photo here. There were 2 buildings, and they're, again, paying $126,000 a year in property tax. If we could have gotten them to build a 4-story building instead of a 3-story building, they probably would have had to tuck some parking under the building. And if we assume that their property tax bill goes up 3% annually, I know there's a 1% cap on our revenue, but the last year it was a lot more than 3%, but I think that was because maybe the building was taxed when it was partially finished as opposed to fully finished. So I don't have all the information from the assessor. And let's assume that the 2025 property tax, $126,000, each floor is worth a third of that, and you multiply that by 4 to figure out what the property tax would have been if it was a 4-story building. And let's assume that there's no tax shield. We know that that's how the assessor works. I put together a graph here basically showing cumulative revenue from the project. The orange line is without multifamily tax exemption. This is what actually has happened. Cumulative revenue growth. And then if you were to get a 4-story building or a 5-story building and there was no tax for the first 8 years, that building is going to catch up and exceed what we have now by year 18 for the 4-story building, or for the 5-story building, and by year 25 for the 4-story building. And if you project this out over 90 years, and remember this isn't city revenue, this is all of our taxing districts, but you're talking tens of millions of dollars over the life cycle of a building, which, you know, those buildings, maybe they'll last longer than 90 years, but I think 90 years is probably on the optimistic end of things for an apartment building in Port Orchard. It's a considerable amount of money. But remember, we do have tax shift, and so this is what's actually happening. I've added this new navy blue line on the top. Because that first 8 years, the revenue, the taxes are being shifted to existing residences, we're not losing that money. And then in year 8, that comes off of the existing residences, and that is just gain for the city in terms of property tax revenue. So it puts us on a sustainable financial footing, or a more sustainable financial footing. And every new council member that comes in to serve for the city, I give them a handout with all kinds of resources to read. I provided you with a link to a video called The Cash Flow of Urbanism that really looked at what are your most valuable, what are your highest yielding buildings in the city from a property tax standpoint. And the last time I looked at this, it used to be the dance studio, and now it is Revival. That building, because it's 100% lot coverage, it's a 2-story building, that from a property tax standpoint, not sales tax, is our highest yielding building in the city. And so I think if we focus on trying to see development that's going to have a higher value per acre, we are going to do better long term. And you know, we looked at Linwood as having, I think, a budget that's 6 times higher than ours, despite having a similar growth rate. If we want to become on a better financial footing to be able to provide the types of services that other cities provide, that's how you do it. And I want to remind the mayor of his conversation last week about the water tower when we asked ourselves whether we wanted the creosote pile tower versus the steel tower. You all said, "Gosh, I hope we invested in the steel tower." And it's a similar, I think it's a similar comparison that we're investing in ourselves by setting ourselves up for success there.
Nick, on your recommendations list, you talked about projects where units are for sale, condos and townhomes. How would the MFTE apply to that? Would the townhome project have to be on a lot that has 4 or 5 more units?
It would. So it doesn't qualify for any single family homes, and if it was a townhome project of 4 units, it wouldn't qualify. I think it's got to be 5 or more in state law.
Okay.
So that would be condos, which we haven't seen a single condo project as long as I've been here. It would be townhomes. We've seen a few of those projects, but they've been rental units. There's a fourplex up on Mitchell, but there hasn't been much in the way of that sort of thing. And whether it's 8 or 12 years, if it's for ownership, I think it's helping. price point in the real estate market that doesn't exist in Port Orchard.
What if someone bought a house and made it into 5 condos? Would that
That
qualify?
qualifies, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can qualify for that type of project as well.
I think I'm gonna speak for myself only. I think that when we do these, when we use the, talk about the words, tax shift, unfortunately, the word that comes to mind is, it's a subsidy being paid by other people. And I think the question is, the investment for the city, I totally agree with what you're saying, both from a long-term purpose. Unfortunately, some people are short-term looking. So it's kind of knowing what is the impact on an individual that we're considering. I mean, when we do that for, our tabs or other items that we've looked at, splitting, impact fees, we're all trying to guess what we're charging somebody else. And that's, one of the things that comes into play, because I'm fully, engaged with the 8, and we've had discussion from the 8 to 12, and I'm glad this is coming back up again. But that's one question I'll want to ask is, what is the impact to each individual citizen for the long-term stability and growth? The other thing is, again, speaking for myself, is we're talking about our growth being so far, ahead of the curve. Do we really want to do the tax exemption to continue the growth rate when we're exceeding our growth targets right now? Go for it.
So, I don't believe we need, well, the builders would love to have it. I think garden apartments should be off the table. I don't think they're happening organically. But I think Ruby Creek is a great example of, we have a park, Kitsap Transit building, a huge park and ride lot. We aren't seeing, our market doesn't seem to support organically mixed-use projects or tall projects. I think at Ruby Creek, we want ground floor retail, and we want a 4, 5, whatever we can get a developer to do, and it won't happen unless we provide an incentive for it to happen. And same way our downtown, I don't believe, redevelopment is just so costly. If we don't provide some sort of incentive, I think our downtown isn't going to change.
And that was a good article in Kitsap Sun the previous week. I mean, it was very common sense on that. I just want to know what the impact, a rough number of what it may be. If it's like no different than what we had,
until we have some projects, it's gonna be cumulative, and at any moment, you guys could say, okay, we've done 5 of these, and that's enough, and we turn it off, and that's what you guys did.
That's what we did.
Yeah, and so, and until we get a couple of them, I can't tell you what the impact is.
I think there's about 20 projects in Bremerton that have qualified for this, and they're saying the impact is about $80 a year. So, I mean, that's a rough estimate of where we're at, but I think it's a really hard thing to quantify because there are so many benefits of the development project in terms of the sales tax revenue of the construction materials and people moving into houses. There's the infrastructure investment, which potentially impacts rates, because if we have developers putting in infrastructure, those are things that aren't being added to your water rates. So I think actually studying it and coming up with a calculation, I mean, you can talk in abstract terms and kind of the pros and cons, but you can't pin down a number.
And what I was trying to say is that this is also by designated areas too, so we can try and focus where we want these.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's what we said when we did it the first time. We wanted downtown development, and we didn't see any.
Right.
Unfortunately, because I don't think we
made too many other options that they picked from.
It was too broad.
Yeah, we made too many options. They all picked
broad.
option 2, which was do nothing, and they get the 8-year.
Well, I will also add that I hate to call it the blip, but that's what I've been calling COVID. That those 3 years, money was tight all the way around, so it is a good time to look at it again.
But remember, we created this tax shift on these projects. We have some of these projects, in 3 years, they're gonna be fully taxed, and we're gonna realize the benefit to that, from that.
Well, we actually haven't lost anything from that project, it's just that the shift is gonna end.
The shift's
So
gonna
who's paying is shifting in 3 years, and it's no longer the citizens that are on the hook for the
Well,
project.
for that one project, do we have any idea on all the MFTE, what the tax?
Noah is working on that information, but I
They're all
don't,
trailing.
So we don't know even on one of them yet.
yeah.
Okay.
I think using Bremerton as an example, you have a frame of reference, which is probably about $80 a year or less.
So what's, sake of time here, is there appetite to continue this conversation?
Yes.
Oh, on this topic?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm good.
there's 3 different tools, Nick is recommending 8, is there a desire to continue conversation about other tools?
Well, I've got the slide on the 12-year, and maybe we should touch on that real quick. Just,
Okay.
I'd like to go through this. So if we went back to our previous framework, but instead of being 10% below fair market rent, we went 20 or 25% below fair market rent, I've provided the rents in here that you would have to add the utility allowance to this. So this is including utilities. At 25%, a studio unit goes down to $1,058 from the fair market rent, which is $1,400 a month, and I think that's what you're seeing advertised in new buildings. So I think the real problem with the 12-year is the administrative cost, and so it's going to take resources to run this program. The auditing requirement for the 12-year is a new law that was passed 2 or 3 years ago, and so I went through it this year for one of our projects where I had to fill out the report, and it is a lot of work. I mean, and I'm the only one here who has the bandwidth to even take that on, and that's probably not what you want your director doing, but I was the one who had to fill that out. And you're entering a line for every unit in the building, what was the rent that was charged, what is the square footage. I mean, you're building out quite a bit.
You said, I believe, when we talked about that previous to this council, and Fred and Scott jumped in, it was a pretty onerous requirement. And administratively, almost.
For both sides.
Yes, for both sides. That was not one where we wanted to go down that
But
road.
you also mentioned the possibility that the owner could be doing more of the heavy lifting.
Well, and in fairness, Rush Development has done a lot of these in Pierce County and elsewhere, and so they had some pretty good templates from City of Tacoma and other places where they have projects that really helped kind of me lay out how to collect the reports, what the report needs to look like. We also built in the utility allowance because previously they had to figure out the maximum rent, and utilities vary from month to month, so their rent would have to fluctuate from month to month. And they said, hey, Tacoma does a utility allowance. We use data from your housing authority to estimate the utilities, and we just take that off the rent, and then their rent is a fixed amount, and it assumes that they have a utility allowance. So that's something that I would definitely want to more clearly build into the code. I think we had the authority to do that in the previous code, but I think having an explicit reporting requirement, when do I publish that information? What happens if the federal government stops producing data? Those types of questions need to be answered, because we wouldn't be able to run this program if HUD stopped releasing data on median income. So our whole program is dependent on federal data.
One quick question, and I may have missed this one. The issue that you brought up about trying to find low income enough to fill that, is there something that we can tweak on how we're doing this?
I think by going to 25% below fair market rent, their problem was they could find the people and they didn't have verifiable income. So their income was low enough that they qualified, but they wouldn't rent to them. And then they had people who could afford it, who wanted the units, who made too much money.
So we can tweak those?
So we can tweak those, yeah.
Oh, that's what I was wondering. That was my question. I thought it was a straight.
Yeah, so long as there are some definitions concerning affordability, and so we have to work within that. But we set the limits, the 40, this table here where the studios have to be rented to people at 40%, we can tweak those numbers.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah. So they would be people.
And there are other methodologies now. We took our methodology from the city of Seattle, and shortly after we adopted it, they went and repealed it and went with a totally different direction. So while Commerce says our method is perfectly happy to look at them if you wanna go down the road of 12-year. But I think that there has to be a budget discussion on, just staffing this, and the Housing Action Plan recommended a housing coordinator. We don't have enough work for a full-time person, but we certainly have more work than fits within our existing,
I think we have to recognize that. If we're gonna go down this 12-year path, we don't have capacity.
So we're gonna lose money on the rental.
Yeah.
And we're gonna pay them
A staff person to.
well,
to
you're not
manage.
losing money on the rental, you're shifting it.
You're shifting.
When are we trying to, I mean, what are we looking at as trying to move this forward?
We're looking for guidance.
We're looking for guidance to you. So I guess,
I mean,
is there an appetite for an 8-year? I
Yes.
think I heard that.
I-
Should we be continuing to bring data forward to consider a 12-year?
Yeah, I was doing some research, and for real affordable housing for a long time, it was the 20-year, and you had it here, and then I was doing some more research, even for a 20-year, because then you really do have that, it's locked in, it's not just for 8 years or 12, because then the landlord can switch it after 8 years and go back up to regular, to fair market.
Remember, you're shifting the tax burden for 20 years.
Well, I was looking at that again, and, I don't know if we put it in the code or whatever, but landlords don't have to raise the rent when you're giving them a tax exempt, that is a great incentive, and they shouldn't, take that rent and, put it on to everybody else. That's what I was reading, that's not common really to do that. It can be, but it's not common, and they shouldn't do that.
So-
Now, my other question, I'm sorry, just really quick. My other question is, so you have a unit, and let's say you go even 12 years or 20 years, so you have a big old building for, it's 100 units, and then whatever the percentage of, 20 of those 20 units. Now, does that mean that whole building gets a tax exempt for either 8
Yeah.
years, 12 years, or less?
Yeah, so example, if you have a 250 unit apartment complex, that's a 250 house development
Mhm.
that they are not paying schools, they're not paying fire, they're not contributing at all for 2 decades.
It's a nominal amount for the land.
But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
citizens are paying that bill.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
They're offsetting all of it for that apartment complex, so that 20% of that apartment complex can be quote affordable. That doesn't add up to me. Like, that doesn't, the math doesn't add up.
It hasn't added up.
No.
Yeah.
And even 12-year, I mean.
But I like the idea of the 99 years of.
And we're not eligible for 20-year right now, so we can't even.
That's the only thing about that program.
Even
that
the
was
12-year,
50
it's a dozen years of apartment complex full of kids that the school's not getting credit for.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to rein, so I got 2, and that would be interested in the 12, but no, it sounds like everybody's supportive of 8. I'm trying to count heads here, and I'm only hearing from 2 that we should be considering the 12, because I don't want to put staff resources into putting data and something together that isn't gonna move forward. So I'm not hearing that there's consensus that more than 2 of you want, to put additional effort into the 12 years. So I'm just trying to get it, I've got a couple more things I gotta touch on
Yeah,
tonight.
no, I would agree with that statement. I'm definitely in on 8. I'd love for us to look at 12. I don't think it goes far enough because still none of these are actual affordable.
So you're 12,
But
you're 12.
I would go 12.
Okay.
That's a foreign word.
But I'm only hearing 2.
Too,
Okay.
because otherwise it doesn't justify, it seems.
Okay.
I'd be happy to talk about 12 more as well.
Okay, so we will continue a discussion.
Okay, so I
Especially,
think what should,
especially as it may align itself with certain areas where we want to
Yes.
promote that in the city.
so do we want to refer this to one of the committees for discussion of where the map should be drawn for these areas? Should that go to land use, or do you want to take that on as the full city council?
Whole council, I think. That's fine.
Okay, so we're not gonna bring that back, probably, because
September at the earliest.
September, probably October, because we got Shelley coming in. This is meaty topic, and I, We didn't have a meeting, I needed to get a bunch of stuff in tonight, so.
We could talk about it in both committees, even if it still comes back to the full council.
Absolutely.
Let's take it to economic development and land use, and because
Okay.
the 8 years economic development.
And
Okay.
with recommendations on where you think leveraging
Yeah.
those would be
Okay.
best.
I got a couple housekeeping things I just want to touch, and then I'll get you guys out of here. One, the city non-motorized bid, you know, the Safe Route to School project there in front of the grade school, opened the bids, got great bids today. So we're really happy about that.
That was Sydney, right?
That's at Sydney,
Yep.
and we've got some paving in other parts of the city that we embedded in that contract out on Sydney Road, or Sydney Avenue south of Tremont, and some paving here in front of City Hall also. And so we'll bring that, we'll be bringing that contract to you soon. The bids are out, we're out to bid right now on the removal of the houses. And we will have that to you, we're targeting the first meeting in August for you guys to award that contract after we get the, what's that?
Permits are in hand.
We have our permits in here?
We are waiting our HPA, which is through Fish and Wildlife, and then as soon as we have that, we'll get our core permit within a few days. But we've met with them on site, and they are very supportive of it.
And that's all 5.
All 5 houses.
But
are-
not times.
Sorry.
But not times.
No, this is structures. just
How do we go out to bid if we don't know the stipulations coming with that permit?
What do you mean stipulations?
They won't give us any like, there will be no stipulations.
We won't award it, so you'll authorize the mayor to, on the meeting in August, he has authorization to sign. We won't award it to the contractor, so the clock won't tick in, or the obligation will start.
Until we have the permits in hand. But we're moving houses, they aren't gonna put any conditions on it.
And I would reassure you that we were acting under an emergency, application with Fish and Wildlife, and that was going through, and they asked us to do it through this route. And we walked the entire site and been on site. They actually were out there again today, so they're very close.
That's good. Sweet.
So, moving forward quickly. So, one last thing. We're gonna cut a ribbon on some new pickleball courts here in August, end of August.
Here, here.
Which is fabulous. Our
Do we get to
court,
play the first games?
we'll work that out. Yeah,
I'm down with
I'll play with you. So
Great.
where I'm going with this is, we have a pickleball club that not many of those members are residents of our city, and they have a locker at Van Z, and they're already clamoring about putting a locker at the new pickleball court. And I believe that puts our residents at a disadvantage, because they have all of their equipment and their gear stored at our facility, and some of those folks are residents, but largely they're not. And they play at Semmel and, you know, in Gig Harbor and other places too. So I'm gonna push back on that. I just wanted to share that with you, unless anybody has any aversion to that. I think our residents should have an equal chance to play on those fields as other folks traveling here. So I'm gonna push back.
Where are
on
they
it.
coming from?
All of, you know,
All over the world.
yeah. They're a large club, and they span all of Kitsap County into Pierce County, and they make.
McCormick Woods
Yeah.
is not limited to who's playing in McCormick Woods.
Yeah.
Pickleball
Oh,
court
yeah.
is not McCormick Woods.
Yeah, I've played there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So anyway, just communicating that we're not gonna allow them to place a locker on these new courts. They have one at Van Z, and they, multiple days a week, they take those courts over, so. All right, that's all I have. See you guys in a week.